Called off my wedding after my fiancé allowed kids but banned my daughter, blaming her for ruining our engagement party by being ill. Earlier this week, Addison, 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and I, 38 degrees male, were about to tie the knot, but I abruptly called it off. For the previous 3 years, we had been together. Everything was going well until we got engaged, which was around 6 months ago. When we started talking about who we wanted to invite to the wedding, things started to go south. Naturally, I wanted my daughter to be present because I have one. Addison, however, was very clear that she did not want any children present at the wedding. Given that she has 2 children of her own from a previous marriage and 6 nieces and nephews with whom she is very close, this was an odd position. Given that the majority of those we invited were also parents, I couldn't understand why she didn't want any children at the wedding. At first, we argued about it a lot, but I finally gave in. I grudgingly agreed to keep my daughter away from the wedding, provided she didn't invite any children from her side of the family. To put things in perspective, my daughter is 14 years old, so she is not even a little child. However, Addison was unaffected by that. She informed me that she wanted a stress-free wedding and that she didn't want any exceptions, even though she loved my daughter, her own children, and even her nieces and nephews. She said that by making exclusions, she didn't want to alienate anyone who had children. I was really angry about it, but I reasoned that because she had already made up her mind, there wasn't much I could do if she really wanted a wedding without children. The actual wedding was going to be small, just a few close friends and family would be coming, and we would be being married in my parents' backyard. I decided to let it go after reasoning that the kids wouldn't be missing out on much fun. Just a few days prior to the wedding, everything changed. Kate, Addison's younger sister, emailed me while I was at work. She was requesting approval for the email, which included pictures of her 2 daughters wearing wedding-appropriate attire. I was initially perplexed. Then I saw that Kate had sent the email to our shared wedding email address, which we had set up especially for vendor communications and RSVPs. It was too late when I realized it must have been an accident. I had previously viewed and captured a screenshot of the email. I tried to check the email again a few minutes later, but Addison had already erased it. I had finally figured out what was going on by that point. Addison had claimed that there would be no children at the wedding, but in reality, she was planning to invite her own children as well as relatives and nephews, but not my daughter. I was incensed at her dishonesty. That day, I didn't say anything as soon as I got home from work. I acted as though nothing was wrong. Addison was being a little odd at first, perhaps because she thought I had read the email and figured out what she was doing. However, Addison calmed down and resumed his typical behavior once I kept everything a secret. I knew she was planning something behind my back, and this was around 2 days before the wedding. I therefore made the decision to ask my daughter about her feelings on Addison. Even before I proposed, I had discussed this with her, but since I was really reconsidering the wedding, I felt it would be best to have another conversation. In retrospect, I'm really happy I took that choice. My daughter told me that Addison had always been kind to her prior to the engagement. But after that, something had changed. My daughter clarified that she hadn't brought it up sooner because she didn't want to spoil my happiness with Addison after witnessing it. Addison, however, had been acting strangely toward her after the engagement. Addison behaved completely differently when I wasn't there whenever she came to visit. My custody agreement states that I get to spend half the month with my daughter, which is a substantial amount of time. When I got home from work, my daughter claimed that Addison would activate the charm, but she ignored her the rest of the time. Prior to the engagement, this wasn't the case. It was unexpected and disheartening to hear this. My daughter also revealed that she thought Addison no longer wanted her in her life when she learned that he intended a wedding without children. She believed it wouldn't matter, so she didn't even try to go. I felt so bad about myself for letting Addison convince me not to invite my own kid to my wedding. I made the decision to call off the wedding at that point. I talked to Addison the day before the wedding. After that, I didn't bother returning home. Addison called me multiple times, but I didn't answer. I told my parents to inform her that I would meet her on the wedding day because I knew she would get in touch with them next. I stayed with my daughter all day instead of returning home. By the end of the day, we both felt much better. I spent the night at a hotel after dropping her off at her mother's house. I arrived at my parents' house the following morning, exactly 1 hour before the ceremony was set to start. A few people had already arrived when I got there, including Addison's dad and both of her sisters, Kate and Amelia. Naturally, all 6 of their children were present, along with Addison's 2 children, who were all under 12 and running around the area. Addison hurried to meet me at the door as soon as she noticed me. She started by saying that Kate and Amelia couldn't leave their children behind, despite her having informed them that the wedding was child-free. She went on to say that her parents thought it would be odd if she married without her own children being there. I could tell she thought I was crazy because she was making up all these absurd excuses. However, I remained silent until she had finished speaking. Then she began asking me strange questions like where I had been the night before and why I was dressed the way I was. I simply got out my phone, showed her a screenshot of the email that Kate had inadvertently sent to our joint wedding email account, and laughed in her face. That was sufficient to silence her. She realized right away that she had been apprehended and that she couldn't get away with it by talking. It was already too late when she began to apologize. I informed her that I had spent the day before with my daughter and discovered that she had been treating my daughter differently for the past few months, ever since we became engaged. I didn't even want an explanation or an answer at this point. I simply informed her that we were done. She clearly did not value my daughter, therefore I made it clear that I would not marry her. I had never treated her children any differently than I had my own, so it was very painful. However, I didn't believe it was a good idea for us to get married because it was obvious that she didn't really value my family or me. I spoke up and didn't wait for her to answer. I simply left. I didn't turn around even though she was shouting for me. I had nothing better to do, so I got into my car, drove to a hotel, and napped for a long time. My phone was inundated with texts when I got up at lunchtime. Addison's family was unhappy, and everyone who had been invited to the wedding was perplexed. However, I was unable to care. I gave my friends and family a quick rundown of the circumstances and then let it go. I visited my daughter later. I informed her that I intended to spend more time with her and that I had canceled the wedding. I acknowledged that, without even recognizing it, we had begun to drift apart during the previous few months. She used to come to me right away if she had a problem with someone, so I realized something was wrong. She hadn't spoken, though, with Addison. At least we were able to work things out even if we both were a little emotional. Speaking of Addison, that's where I've been having trouble. 5 days have passed since the day we were meant to tie the knot, and by now, almost everyone is aware of the reason I called off the wedding. Her dishonesty was just as much of a factor as the way she treated my daughter. Being dishonest is, in my opinion, a major deal breaker in any relationship. I've already been cheated on twice, and I can tell you that it always begins with a simple fib. She believed that she could get away with telling such a large falsehood. I don't believe that canceling the wedding at the last minute was incorrect on my part. Yes, it was sudden and rude, but considering that she had intended to surprise me with the kids at the last minute, I believe it was reasonable. Her family feels I'm being harsh and is angry that I didn't offer her an opportunity to clarify. Addison has been contacting me constantly, as has the rest of her family. Addison's only justification is that she had good reason to invite my kid, but she couldn't beg me not come. She also finds it quite offensive that I didn't think our relationship needed at least a chat before terminating it in that manner, even after we had been together for so long. She has stated that she will discuss her reasons in person, but she has not disclosed them. How she could possibly defend her decision to not invite my daughter to our wedding is beyond me. To the best of my knowledge, she and my daughter have never had any problems together. I still believe like I ought to have talked to her first though. I've been feeling guilty for the past few days, and I'm not sure why. I believe that rather than acting as though everything was all right up until the last minute, I ought to have been honest with her. I should have gone right home from work and addressed her the day I learned what she was planned. I could have prevented a lot of the drama that is going on now if I had done that. I've been bothered by the fact that I feel like a bit of a jerk for not handling things better. Am I the jerk for abruptly calling off the wedding and not talking to my fiancé? First update. 3 days have passed since I posted, and I'm still at the motel. I contacted Addison today and informed her that she needed to vacate the house right now. Since it was my house before she moved in, I believe it is only right that she must depart now that we are done. She has till the end of the month, in my opinion, to find a place. Since sleeping in a hotel isn't a practical long-term solution, I intend to crash with a buddy until then. I feel much better about my choice aside from that. My friends have encouraged me that, in the end, I made the decision to become a father because it is what I value most. I don't believe I have to apologize for putting my daughter first. People can avoid me if they have an issue with that. I don't give a damn about Addison's motivations. I don't think I need to hear them at all if she can't send me an explanation. I'm not interested in seeing her at the moment. Since it's obvious that her parents and sister were aware of her scheme the entire time and kept quiet about it, I've also barred them. I thought I got along well with her family, so this is disappointing. Before everything that transpired, I firmly believed that I had become a member of their family. I hadn't replied to Addison much up until last night, but I did advise her to begin searching for a new residence. I also informed her that she may text me to explain why she didn't want my kid to attend the wedding. but I also made it apparent that there was no turning back once the harm had been done. She has not responded to that message. I apologize to those who inquire, but I have no idea why she would be acting in such a different way around my kid. Since I'm genuinely interested, I've talked to my daughter extensively, but she too doesn't know. My daughter was as perplexed as I was when I showed her the messages and we talked about Addison's actions. She informed me that she was surprised when Addison began acting differently around her. In the early days following the engagement, my daughter even made an attempt to patch things up, but Addison remained aloof and uninterested in her attempts. Addison appears to be the issue here, based on what I've heard. Although I am aware that many children struggle to understand their parents' separation, my daughter is not one of those children, and she has no justification for lying about Addison. To begin with, I was never married to her mother. We dated for 2 years before splitting up when she was 3 years old. She hardly recalls our time together. For the last 5 years, my ex has also been married. I have no doubt that my daughter was not at all offended by my choice to move on and wed Addison. Until recently, they had a nice connection. I'm not claiming my kid is flawless, even though she may be in my opinion, but I do know she doesn't lie, especially when it comes to something like this. She is aware of how much I respect openness and truthfulness in my loved ones. When she claims that Addison began acting differently, I genuinely believe her. Nevertheless, I doubt Addison will reveal her motivations. I texted her a few hours ago, and she hasn't responded yet. She probably hasn't received my message because she works from home and must be on her phone all the time for her job. She always responds right away, so I'm certain she's ignoring me. However, it makes no difference. All I want is for her to leave my home so I may resume my comfortable life. I have to go back to work in a few days, and staying in this motel is strange. Second update. 3 days have passed since I sent Addison a text. She did respond earlier today. She claimed to understand why I didn't want to see her face to face, but she demanded that we do so she could give me an explanation for why she didn't want my daughter to attend the wedding. Despite the fact that we are no longer together, she said she didn't want me to misinterpret her. Addison said that her reasons were legitimate and that she didn't want me to think she was the villain. She said she didn't want to hurt me, so she lied. That reasoning was absurd because she still caused me pain. I responded in less than 30 minutes, being very clear that I would not be speaking with her face to face. Anything she said had to be sent via text, and that was the end of it. She said it was around an hour ago. She stated that something that occurred at the engagement party was the reason she didn't want my daughter to attend the wedding. Regretfully, my daughter wasn't feeling well on the day of the engagement celebration. I already knew she wouldn't be able to come when it was my turn to keep her for the month. Despite feeling ill, she insisted on going even though I told her she could stay in her room. She desired to join in the festivities. She went back upstairs to relax after spending a few minutes downstairs toasting with everyone. Although some people inquired about her well-being, it didn't cause a significant disturbance. Addison went upstairs to see how my daughter was doing, but he thought she had stolen our thunder. She was chatting and laughing on the phone with a friend. According to Addison, my daughter didn't appear ill at all. Addison, who tends to stir things up, talked to her sisters about her worries rather than to me or my daughter. After the engagement, Addison started to remove herself from my daughter because of this minor miscommunication, which unnecessarily escalated. Addison persuaded herself that my daughter will eventually cause issues because she wasn't thrilled with our marriage. That one small incident was the only source of this view. When Addison told me this, I was appalled, so I didn't even bother answering her reply. I questioned my daughter about Addison's words to put things in perspective. My daughter acknowledged that she was still feeling poorly that day, but she was conversing with a friend. Speaking with a friend was merely a means of self-distraction. It did not indicate that she was not ill. Addison's logic was utterly nonsensical. I think this episode provided Addison a reason to stop acting like she was being kind to my kid, even though I think she may have been insecure from the beginning. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't wed Addison. She would have undoubtedly caused further issues along the road. In hindsight, there were further warning signs. When my daughter was around, Addison would often remark that I didn't spend enough time with her. Ironically, I never voiced any complaints, and she frequently spent comparable amounts of time with her own children. Her behavior as a parent was admirable, in my opinion. When I think back on my earlier posts, I see that Addison was a major factor in my lack of time with my kid. She quietly took up all of my attention, both mentally and practically. I was so committed in our relationship at the time that I didn't realize it. It was too late before the warning signs were noticed. I'm relieved that I was able to end that relationship at last because I didn't want to remain with someone if it meant sacrificing my relationship with my daughter. I'm not really sure how to interpret that absurd message that Addison sent me today. It puzzled me that she destroyed our connection over something so trivial, something that might have been settled with a conversation, so for a long I thought about answering her and telling her precisely how I felt. However, I changed my mind since I didn't think it was worth the hassle. Until it's time for me to go back home, I would much rather ignore her. Unfortunately, since I need my job clothing, it might happen shortly. She needs a somewhere to stay soon, I hope. Although my friends have graciously allowed me to stay with them, I really simply want to return home. Update 3. I made this post 2 days ago. I returned home earlier today to get my clothes and other necessities. I was heading to a friend's apartment and decided to leave the hotel because it was becoming too costly. I made the decision to visit the house and get everything I required. I wasn't sure if Addison would be home because I banned her and didn't respond to her messages after she sent them. Regretfully, she was present when I got there in the afternoon. She obviously wanted to talk and appeared sad to see me. I began gathering my belongings as fast as I could, intending to be done and out of there before anyone could speak. I urged her to start looking for a place so I could move back in as I was ready to leave. She apologized profusely and followed me as I made my way to my car. She claimed she shouldn't have lied or made such a huge deal out of the engagement party event, and she acknowledged that she felt awful about what had transpired. She clarified that she recently got into a battle with her sisters after understanding how their advice had led to the breakdown of our relationship and that they had made it look like a much greater problem than it actually was. Addison pleaded for another chance, saying she would improve her connection with my daughter and me. Hearing her plea made me sad, but it was too late. When I got to my car, I informed her that although I could relate to her feelings, my kid was the most important thing to me. I had a duty to act morally toward my daughter. Addison was clearly about to cry, but I didn't want to deal with it. I drove off after saying a brief goodbye and reminding her to find another home. It was far more difficult to see her in person than it was to text her, even if I felt like a bit of a jerk for leaving like that. I don't regret anything though, it had to be done. I'm staying with a friend for the time being with the hopes that Addison will find somewhere else within the next few weeks. After she leaves, I can return home and carry on with my life, or whatever normal will be going forward. Although it may take some time to get over this, the bright side is that my relationship with my daughter is stronger than it has ever been. Our relationship has returned to its pre-engagement state. There are no secrets between us. She tells me everything about her life once more. Seeing her chat eagerly about her school day over our FaceTime today made it all worthwhile. In a few weeks, we even have a beach vacation planned. I think I could use the break, so I've invited some friends with children her age to come along. Although the last few weeks have been difficult, I have optimism for brighter times to come. After my stepdaughter's passing, I found my husband and his ex-wife in our bed. I chose to cut all ties and start anew. Original post. My stepdaughter Becca, 14F, died 4 weeks ago. I've been in her life since she was 7 years old. We were extremely close. My husband Derek, 40 million, his ex-wife Sam, 38 feet, and I, 35 feet, get along very well. There has never been an issue in the 7 years that I've been with Derek. Sam has always been kind to me. She didn't even care that Becca called me mom, too. Right after Becca's passing, Sam had so much anxiety and depression that she was unable to be by herself. She has no family besides us, so we invited her to stay with us. Sam hardly leaves the house. She mostly just sleeps in Becca's room, which is completely understandable. I always tell her that I'm here if she needs me and that I want her to take her time grieving and that there is no pressure to go back to her home. Today I needed to run some errands, so I asked Sam if she'd like to join me to get out of the house a little bit, but she declined and said she'd rather just stay at the house and sleep. I told Derek that I was leaving and that I would be back in 2-ish hours. He works from home. I also told him to check on Sam every once in a while, and maybe try getting her to eat something. After stopping at the post office, I realized I forgot my library book that I needed to return, so I went back home to get it. As soon as I walked in the door, I heard moaning coming from mine and Derek's bedroom. I immediately knew what was happening, and my heart completely broke at the moment. I wasn't completely sure what to do, but I ended up deciding to confront them, so I walked to the bedroom and opened the door and began yelling at them both. Sam started having an anxiety attack and ran to the bathroom while Derek kept apologizing profusely. I asked him what the hell was happening. He told me that he made himself and Sam some lunch and they began talking about Becca, and shared some memories. And then Sam ended up kissing him and he didn't pull back, and then it ended with them in our bed. They're begging me to understand that it was just grief that caused them to become intimate and that they both made a mistake. I don't know what to do. I love this man. And I love Sam. I'm heartbroken that they did this to me and put me in this position. I feel so stuck. Relevant comments. Great Championship 252. That would be hard for me. I understand grieving, but how is this excusing cheating? What happens next time he is sad? Edit. I misspoke when I said sad. Obviously, this is something beyond devastating. I still don't think it can be used as an excuse. OP. I don't want to excuse his cheating. I think I want to divorce him, but I'm anxious about doing it right after we lost Becca. Spellbound mama, probably together. Do you both own the home? If it's in your name, change the locks. Stay strong and don't listen to his excuses. I am so sorry this happened to you during such a difficult time. Oh up. Exactly what I was thinking if I'm being honest. And yes, we both own it. When I told him to leave, he kept saying sorry and then said that he would leave and respect me wanting him gone for a while. Impulsive X thoughts. Are you seeing a therapist perhaps? You're dealing with a lot right now, it might be useful. OP. Yes, I am in therapy. I've been with my therapist for other things for the last 3 years. She's been very helpful. I saw her yesterday and was able to figure some things out. Update 1, May 11th, 2024. I decided that I'm filing for a divorce. I can't ever trust Derek again. It sucks because we had an amazing relationship, I thought. He's always been great, so this was a complete shock to me. Last night, Derek came over to talk. He confessed a lot. Turns out it wasn't their first time having sex like most people thought. They've been having sex since 3 months before Becca died. I am completely shocked and heartbroken. Sam also reached out last night and thanked me for everything I've done for her, and told me she was sorry. I didn't respond. I blocked her. I did so much for Sam and considered her a friend, so this hurts a lot, more than I can handle. This is all too much. As hard as this is gonna be, I need to leave Derek and cut them both out of my life. I am ready to do so. I am done. Also, some people are saying I deserve this because I should have known better than to let Sam into our home, around Derek. But, you need to understand that I'm a giving person, I trust people more than I should. I truly thought Sam was an amazing person. I know it's unusual to become friends with your husband's ex-wife, but it's just how it went for us and I shouldn't be blamed for what happened. Thank you to everyone who commented nice things and for the kind messages. You've all been helpful during this insanely difficult time, I appreciate it. Relevant comments, Impulsive X thoughts. Out of curiosity, what are his excuses for cheating? Those two are going to be in a world of hurt, once the guilt settles in. They're going to be asking themselves why it had to be Becca and will eventually come to the conclusion that it's their punishment for what they've done to you. I can pretty much guarantee you that. Ope. He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. It seems so icky to me. How can he vent about our struggles like that and then go and have sex with Sam? It's just awful of him. I don't understand it. Editor's note, remove the first half of the updates as it was a rehash of update number 1 update 2. May 13th, 2024. I'm getting lots of questions about some things, so I figured I'd answer a few of them. Have I told anyone about what happened besides my mom? Yes, I told a few friends and some family members. Most of them are supportive of my decision and aren't speaking to Derek. Where is Derek staying? Currently, he's staying at a hotel. Our friends refuse to let him stay with them. He's lost a lot of people due to his awful decisions. Has he tried fighting me on getting a divorce? Yes, he begged me not to file for divorce, but when I told him I needed him to just let me go, and that I was too exhausted to fight him on this, he let it be and agreed to getting a divorce. Why isn't Derek staying with Sam? He told me he didn't want to continue to hurt me, so he told Sam he was done with her for good, and that they have no reason to speak to each other anymore. I have no idea if that'll last and if they'll just end up together, but I truly don't care what they do anymore. I just want peace. What was Derek's excuse for cheating? He told me that they just accidentally reconnected one night when I was away at my mom's. He was stressed we weren't conceiving and were having miscarriages, so he vented to Sam, and then somehow that led to sex. Disgusting of them both, I know. Feel free to ask anything else, and I'll try to answer. Thank you everyone for your support and advice. Relevant comments. OP on what happened to Becca. OP. It was very sudden. She died in a car accident when she was with one of her friends and her friend's parents. OOP on her husband's parents being supportive or not, and if they know about his cheating. OP. I get along with Derek's mom very well, but he's also a mama's boy, so it's kinda complicated. She will always be there for him. He'd stay with her if she didn't live across the country. She knows what he did and told me she had a talk with him but said that he's still her son and she'd help him with anything if he needed it. I'm thinking I need to cut her out of my life too, which makes me really sad because we were close and talked on the phone almost daily. OP on if she has children with her husband. OOP. We've had 6 miscarriages total. All of them were in the first trimester. NSBP. More updates, May 14, 2024. I just found out that he is staying with Sam and not at the hotel. He told me it's too expensive to stay at a hotel and Sam is the only one that'll help him right now. I had a feeling this would happen. Just knowing that they are still probably sleeping together hurts my heart. I talked to a lawyer this morning and we are proceeding with the divorce and Derek agreed to it. It's actually happening, and I feel some relief that he's not fighting me on this. My mom leaves on Sunday. I'm scared to be alone. But I go back to work on Monday, so I'm hoping it'll be a good distraction. I'll keep updating if anything else happens. Thank you everyone, I am so grateful for you all. Relevant comments Immaculate 329. OP, how did you find out he was staying at his ex-wife's place? Anything he says should be taken with a grain of salt. He is not true to his words and going on contact with Sam. OP. He texted me this morning after we talked to lawyers, and said he just wants to be honest with me. I told him to stop giving me updates on what he's doing in his life and that it's not something I need to know. It seems like he wanted to tell me to hurt me. OP on how she is doing, EOP. Thank you. I'm doing a little better today. My mom and I went on some nature walks and went out into the garden this afternoon. That helped. Becca loved gardening with me, so it made me feel closer to her. Becca's diary. May 15, 2024, I decided to go through some of Becca's stuff today. I just found her diary in a box in the back of her closet. Would it be wrong to read some of it? I feel like it would help me feel closer to her, but part of me feels like it's wrong too. I haven't told Derek that I found it either, and I'm unsure if I should tell him. What would you do? Relevant comments. OP on if she was closer with Becca prior to her sudden passing. OP. Becca and I were very close. It felt like she told me anything and everything, but I honestly think all parents feel that way about their kids, so I'm kinda nervous to read it. Just a little update. May 19, 2024. I figured it's been a few days, so I should give a little update. My mom is leaving in a couple hours, so I'll be alone. I'm kinda nervous about it. She helped me stay distracted and kept me going. IDK how I'm gonna handle her being gone. I go back to work tomorrow, first day back since Becca passed away. I'm looking forward to it though because it'll keep me distracted. Also, I did read some of Becca's diary. It made me love her even more. She was such a sweetheart. I went back a few months and saw that she noticed some weird behavior between Derek and Sam. Didn't mention that she knew of the affair, but she just wrote that she thought it was kinda strange that they all three would hang out more than usual, without me. I might read more, but so far I haven't found anything that's disturbing, just her being a teenager and talking about crushes, fights with friends, happy family memories, etc. Tomorrow I'm also talking to my lawyer, so I might have more updates on that. Thanks for the continuous love and support everyone. Last update for a while. May 26, 2024 started randomly getting a lot more messages, comments, so I figured I'd do another little last update. My first week back at work went great. I wasn't expecting it to go so well, but thankfully it did. My coworkers were so helpful and patient with me. On Friday night I decided I didn't want to stay home all weekend alone, so I decided to drive up to my mom's. It helps that I have a 3-day weekend so I can spend more time with her. I'm heading back home tomorrow. Also, for those of you that have messaged me hateful things for reading Becca's diary, I just have to say, you aren't in my shoes right now. Telling me I'm a bad mom because I'm reading her diary is just ridiculous. I learned so much more about her, about how caring and sweet she is, and it made me love her even more. It's how I'm able to feel so close to her right now, so please don't tell me I'm a bad parent for just trying to get by one of the hardest times of my life. You have no idea what it's like. I don't have much of an update, so this will be it. I'll come back and update once the divorce happens though. Thank you to those of you that have been nothing but kind and helpful. You helped me feel less alone. I'll forever be grateful. Sam saw my Reddit post and is threatening to sue me. June 1, 2024. Sam made a fake FB profile to message me and tell me she wants to sue me for telling strangers about what happened. Derek supports her apparently. I don't need this. Am I not allowed to vent about my life to people online? I just want life to get better. I'm so tired. Fuck you, Sam. Fuck you, Derek. Edit. Sam is in the comments and messaged me on here too. Blocked her. Additional information from OOP on the message from Sam. OOP. No, I just ignored her. It might be an empty threat just to make my life harder, but I'm unsure. Her message said, so I was scrolling TikTok and ended up on an account where they read Reddit posts, and guess whose post they read? Yours. First you tell friends and family and then you go to a bunch of strangers and tell them our life story? I can't believe you. It isn't just your business to tell. Becca would be so disappointed in you. Be prepared cause I think I'm gonna be suing you for this. This was no one else's business. You did this to yourself, remember that? I'm actually baffled. She thinks Becca would be disappointed in me. BAUDF. I don't think I can do this anymore. June 11th, 2024 I have been as strong as I can be but I have been really struggling. So much is going on and I'm just so tired. How can I keep going? I just want to be with Becca, I miss her. I miss her smile, I miss her laugh, I miss how she'd try to make you laugh when you were sad by telling dad jokes, I miss how she liked being in the garden with me. I miss seeing all her new drawings, I miss her beautiful eyes. I miss everything about her. I just want her back. I need her back. Edit, I am okay. I just needed a space to vent. I was getting so many messages asking if I'm alright, and I just wanted to say thank you to those that reached out. I am okay, I will be okay. Some days are harder than others, but I think I'll get through this. I'm so grateful for the little community I have here, thank you all so much. Sam took her life on June 20th, 2024. July 4th, 2024. Sam ended up taking her own life on June 20th. I am still trying to process everything. She had hurt me deeply, but this isn't something I wanted whatsoever. And Derek blames me. I feel so many things and I'm gonna be away for a while again, but I wanted to update you all. Thanks for the love everyone. Comments OP on how she is doing after Becca's death and now Sam's passing. OP. I hope they're together again. And I hope they're both at peace too, that's all I hope for. Thank you. Taking a break from Reddit and going on a trip in a week. July 11th, 2024. Well, I'm doing it, I'm taking the advice that so many of you had. I'm going on a trip since my job doesn't need me till the middle of August. I was so lucky I had my mom come stay with me a lot, and had my best friend come stay with me when my mom couldn't. But I felt like I was asking too much of them. So I decided that maybe traveling might actually be a good idea. In a week, I'm going to Norway. Becca and I always wanted to go there one day, it was on our bucket list. I'm actually excited. I'm also thinking of getting a pet when I come back. But might wait till I move. Thank you to those that recommended I do this. Becca would be happy I'm doing this, she'd be so frickin' thrilled for me. You probably won't hear from me for a while, I'm taking a long break from Reddit and all my social media. I think it's best for me. But just know, I love and appreciate all of you that have been there for me, I would have been so lost without some of you. Yours truly, Alyssa. A few updates. October 24th, 2024. Hi everyone, I haven't been on here in so long. I got so many messages asking me to do an update, so here it is. Norway was absolutely breathtaking. I had so much fun and met some amazing people while I was there. I plan on returning in the future for sure. A couple weeks ago was the 6-month anniversary of Becca's death. It's been hard, but it's getting easier to live everyday life, but it also pains me to say that, because I feel guilty for moving on and healing. IDK if that makes sense, maybe it does to those who have also lost someone close. I moved out of Derek and my house a month ago and got myself a cozy little house all to myself, and oh yeah, I got a dog. His name is Charlie and he's a darling little Cavalier Spaniel. He's been great, I absolutely love him. Also, I am officially divorced as of last week. It was a very easy divorce and I'm so happy about that. But Derek didn't want any of Becca's things when we tried figuring out who gets what, he left it all to me. I tried hard to get him to take something because I feel like he'll regret it but he said he didn't want anything, so I have all of Becca's stuff. I have no idea why he didn't want anything but I have it all in the guest bedroom right now. I'm trying to figure out what to do with everything. Derek is apparently an alcoholic now and quit his job. He seems to be doing terribly. Besides all that, IDK if I have anything else to share, I just want to say thank you again to all of my supporters. I've made some friends here and I am so thankful for you all. I appreciate every one of you. Top comments. Commenter 1. Alyssa, I think of you often and check back periodically for an update. I'm so happy to hear that your trip went well. Equally exciting to hear that you've moved on with your life, have a new house, and a dog. Cavaliers are so cute and sweet. Enjoy. Becca's things belong with to you. You will know how best to honor her. Wishing you the best life has to offer. Thank you so much for letting us know how you're doing. Commenter 2. I'm so happy you enjoyed Norway. I spent a summer there many moons ago when I was 17 years old. Lived with a host family in a tiny little town in the western fjords. It was amazing. I'm also glad to hear you are moving forward your life. You should definitely preserve Becca's things. I imagine Derek didn't want them BC. He intends to head down a path of self-destruction from which he may not come back. It's a shame he couldn't face his grief and find healthy ways to cope with the pain. If he had, he likely wouldn't have destroyed your marriage and played a part in the destruction of Sam. Last we heard from you, Derek was blaming you for Sam's death. Does he still blame you? Or is he too drunk to care anymore? Hold Becca in your heart and remember all the ways she was amazing. You may end up being the only one left to carry her memory into the future. My fiancé let his mom dictate our wedding, including asking me not to wear white. Here's how I took back control of my life. Original post. Have you ever seen I Love a Mama's Boy? Well, that's my life basically. I, 27F, have been with my fiancé John, 28F, since high school. We dated and broke up because his mother Debbie, 53F, convinced him we were too young to be in love. We broke up and went to college. During my sophomore year we started talking on socials again. He apologized and said he missed me. We got back together. Cue the waterworks. Debbie literally cried the first time she saw we were back together and told John that I have done witchcraft on him. I've always respected Debbie out of respect for my mother and upbringing. I was not raised to go back and forth with my elders, but she definitely abuses that. Since John and I decided to get back together, she has tried to hook him up with women from her church, her job, and even asks her friends for their daughters to give it a shot. John denies all of them and Debbie says that I'm controlling. John has told her to stop, but not in a way I feel she gets the point. Anyway, 3 months ago John proposed. Deb didn't come to the engagement party. Cool. She didn't come to the family dinner we had so both sides could meet. Cool. John's dad came and apologized for his ex's behavior. He left her when John graduated high school. I told him don't worry about it. The problems really began when John decided to confront his mother about how she's behaving toward our whole engagement. This turned on the light bulb in his brain, as he's always tried to ignore it and tell me to ignore her. She gave him a sob story about how she got pregnant with him before marriage and never really got to have a wedding, and this is triggering her. She had a shotgun wedding at the courthouse. He asked her what she needed to feel comfortable and she responded that if she wore white and I wore a soft pink or lavender she would feel comfortable. My fiancé for some reason thought this was a fair compromise. He also said, not asked, that his mom could walk me down the aisle so she can get her moment in her dress. I told him absolutely not, and we got into an argument about it. I told him that it's insane that he would argue with me to defend his mom's honor, but wouldn't do the same the other way around. He accused me of being petty and selfish. It was bad. We both have agreed to cool off, but by how heated it got I could tell we both almost agreed to call it off. Now we're in a weird space and I love John, but now see how much he lets her impact our life. I just imagine her sitting at home with this evil grin knowing she's ruining my relationship with John and he's just putty in her hands. I think I should just call off the wedding. AIO? Or is it just a color? Top comments. Ducky's mom. This isn't about a dress color, it's about control and possibly a dash of humiliation. Do you really want to put down roots, start a family, with a man willing to bend backwards for his mommy to the point of telling his bride she can't wear white but his mom gets the glory? I shudder to think what having kids with this man would look like. Hallucinogenic. He can marry his mother in her white dress then. What an absolutely unhinged request. Any self-respecting man would be appalled to even bring this to his intended bride. Anon, 4665444. You're not overreacting, but do you want a husband who will prioritize his mother's feelings over yours? Because this will not change after you get married. This is him showing you his priorities. Update 1. Hey everyone, not sure if this is the update everyone wanted, but this is what happened since my last post. I laid out a couple of talking points that I couldn't articulate over the rage. I met up with John after work at home. I was at the gym letting off steam. We spoke on everything and made plans to speak to his mother. John came home remorseful. He told me he was anxious about it and brought it up to a coworker and friend about how I don't want to compromise. Apparently his friend, God bless his soul, went off on him about him being cringy. This angered me. So when I say it's a problem but another man tells you and now you see the other side? I brought up my talking points, him being easily manipulated. This was also proved when I said he would listen to whatever another man said before his partner. Even though his friend agreed with me, it hurt that he didn't listen to me. His mom went out of her way to break us up with this silly request. He was way more open to this theory now, knowing how cringe he looks even telling this situation to someone else. I compared it to a father removing a bride's wedding garter. He got the point. He agreed to his mom's crazy request before even talking to me. He claimed he didn't. He told her he'll see how I feel about it and just brought it up to me. I asked why he did not see that his mother walking down the aisle on his wedding day was extremely creepy. He said it's just a dress in his eyes. He just didn't want his mom to miss the wedding. I told him there will be no wedding if he doesn't straighten up. He said he understood. Me showing him how blatantly obvious it was that she hates me. She didn't even ask to wear white alongside me, which is still weird, but that I don't wear white at all as if I'm some impure whore. Thanks Reddit because I wasn't even thinking of that one. He said he didn't see it that way, he just knew she hadn't been showing up because she said seeing me in white hurts her. So I said, do you not hear your own mom saying she wants to be the bride herself? That she can't stand it being me? It finally looked like a ding went off in his head. Me asking him what role would she play in our wedding, childbirth, Mother's Day and everything to come? Would I always come second place? He assured me I wouldn't and he realizes how bad he fucked up. He was just trying to keep the peace. I asked by always making her happy and making me miserable. I refused to live my life this way. He agreed and said he was sorry and that he wouldn't want me to be miserable. We have no children yet but we created a plan and how to deal with any big milestone. She won't be there for anything unless I'm comfortable with it. And I won't be unless she does a 180. I asked what his mom said to change his mind and you all guessed it, she cried. She cried about how her baby was getting taken away from her. How she never got her wedding. How his dad left her and she was alone and had no one else. That she felt sick and just wanted to experience a real wedding before she dies. She is perfectly healthy unless there's something she hasn't told us? Elle just told him if that was enough to manipulate him what's to say he won't turn on me again. He said his friend and dad talked sense into him about how he was going to lose me. I told him today was the last straw for me. He had to do 4 things to keep me engaged to him if he even cared to. Go LC with his mom and do not let her make any decisions on our wedding. Which will be postponed another year to see if he actually sticks to his word. He has to go to counseling, individual and couples counseling. He has to speak to his mom with me present about her behavior toward me because every time he goes by himself he comes back with a reason why he left it alone. He must create strong boundaries and learn to uphold them. He agreed. Then came the bad part. I showed him the post. I felt so bad as he read everyone rip him to shreds in the comments. I could see how uncomfortable he was as he read how much of a mama's boy he was and other things about his mom. He was hurt that I agreed that I should leave in some comments. He read for a few minutes until he saw someone call him a spineless "see you next Tuesday," and then gave my phone back. He said it was really harsh but I had to show him how crazy the situation sounded even if it was just to keep the peace on a surface level. Him reading the post was icing on the cake. He said he saw everyone telling me to leave and his heart physically started hurting knowing that he deserved it. We called his dad, who I'm no longer calling future FIL because I will call this wedding off tomorrow if he doesn't have my back when we speak to his mom. John's dad Dan, who I'll name since he's a big part of this update. Dan also read John the riot act again. He was relieved John decided to get his act together. We agreed to go to Deb's house tomorrow with Dan and John's aunt. My dad is tagging along. John has said he will tell his mother that she can't under any circumstances make our wedding about her. He also said if she does cry or try to guilt trip him he will tell her he's going NC. I feel terrible as getting a man to stop talking to his mother isn't something I ever thought I even wanted. I doubt Debbie will come around, especially not tomorrow with all of us against her. I don't know if John will backtrack as soon as he gets there. I have explained if he doesn't grow a spine I'm leaving. He either can marry me or marry his mom. But that's my ultimatum. He said he chooses me. We'll see I guess. This all should make me happy but I still feel icky. I'll update tomorrow after we all talk to Debbie. Update 2. Hey everyone, I'm back with the last update. This is a bit long so buckle up. Some people reached to disrespect me. I honestly don't care if you don't believe my story or find me annoying, but messaging me, calling me names, being disrespectful and or saying I shouldn't wear white to my own wedding is classless. I won't respond and I genuinely hope you all get the help you need for whatever trauma makes you that much of an angry person. To all the people who have reached out with positive vibes and advice, thank you so much you cutie patooties. Anyway, John and I met up after work and we headed to pick up Dan. John's aunt couldn't make it. My dad was meeting us there. I had really bad anxiety. I told Dan and Dad they should give us a few before knocking so she doesn't feel ambushed. They agreed. Here's the part everyone was waiting for. We get to Debbie's. My heart feels like I'm going up the world's tallest roller coaster slowly. John is quiet. We get there and he gives her a firm but respectful "Hey Mom." We sit down and John tells her we came to talk to her. She asked what's wrong. John got right into it. He bluntly said to her that her actions toward me for years have been petty. Her not showing up for any of our wedding events was unacceptable to him. He flat out asked her why she has a problem with me. I genuinely thought he was going to start with the dress situation. He went for the root of it all. Debbie acted like she had no idea what he was talking about. She has actively tried to get him to cheat, leave me for other women, but in that moment was shocked, and doesn't know where this was coming from. She said she has no problems with me and loves me like a daughter. She looked at me like she expected me to talk, but like I said to you all, I wanted to see what John had to say. He asked her to be honest and named all the times he's recalled that she insulted me to my face and behind my back. He mentioned she also tells him he could do better every time I'm not around. This was news to me, but am I shocked? No. Deb was livid. She genuinely couldn't believe he outed her like that. She starts going off on him, calling him disrespectful and saying he was disrespecting his own mother for an outsider. She kept saying, I know she made you do this. I know she's the one making you disrespect me like this. John was trying to reason with her and get her to calm down. I text Dan and my dad to come in. Once they were inside, Deb became a different person. She was startled as she wasn't expecting them, and then all of the things she was just saying went out of the window. She turned to Dan and my dad and said John walked in and just started yelling at her because of me. My dad looked at me and I shook my head no. Once Dan and Dad got in, everything was calmer for a little while. She went back to denying she didn't like me. They all told her that it was obvious. That the dress request was shameful of her. She immediately replied, it's shameful that I won't let her son spend time with her. John said that's not true. At this point I'm burning inside. I wanted to correct all of her inaccuracies, but I stood quiet. John asked her what's the real issue with OP. Deb starts saying how she knew I was going to be an issue since we were in HS. She said that once John got with me, his grades started dropping, which isn't true. That he stopped making time for family. Also, not true. That he once didn't show up to celebrate Mother's Day with her a few times because of my birthday. My birthday is in April, Mother's Day is in May. That once we got back together he forgot about her completely because I made him abandon her. He goes to her house at least 3 times a week. She said the fact that we had the engagement party without checking how she felt about it was wrong, and all the evidence she needed to see what kind of woman I am. My dad pointed out that she didn't pay for the engagement dinner to have any input on it. Dan asked her was she thinking of asking to wear white at our wedding? Why is she so hungry for attention? Her face got red and she went off. She told Dan maybe if he would have properly married her and gave her a real wedding she wouldn't feel left out. Dan straight up called bullshit and said that she didn't want to have a real wedding even though he tried to convince her. The reason being that her mother told her pregnant brides are tacky. She started crying. I honestly felt bad for Debbie here. Mothers, be nice to your daughters or you'll create Debbies. My dad got everyone to calm down. John finally spoke again and told his mom that he can't keep defending her when she won't even try to respect me. That for his sanity and our relationship, he's going LC. Deb kept crying and said that John can't leave her for dead, she's the only mother he'll ever have. Mothers are forever. Wives are not. I'm not even his wife yet, and I'm already tearing apart the family. He kept going. He told her that we are going to get married. She can't respect me or stop crossing boundaries, she'll get cut off completely. That his visits are dropping down to 1 every 2 weeks and that she needs to call less. She started going off. She knew it. I'm doing something for him. What did I do to her son? I'm a manipulator and a problem. She told my dad he raised a demon. My dad shot back at her to watch her mouth. John kept shouting, Mom stop, Mom stop. But she kept screaming and then she started hyperventilating. Whoever called it, you might be able to see the future. She was gripping John's arm saying she can't breathe. This was when I said to myself, oh no. He's about to flip-flop. He looked at me and I knew he knew what I was thinking. John got her a cup of water, then asked his dad if he could make sure his mom was okay and asked my dad to take Dan home. Dan and Dad agreed and his mom started crying louder. She literally screamed, I can't breathe, as we walked out so he could hear her. I felt fucking terrible and I finally spoke. I told John I'm sorry. And I understand if he felt bad. He said he knew she was faking it but his instincts wanted to run over and make sure she was okay. I asked, are you? He said no, but he looked really sad about it. My dad walked out behind us. My dad has never seen this side of Deb. Neither have I. She's always been catty or shady toward me, but this was insane. My dad straight up told John that his mom needed help with her mental health. John said he's going to talk to his aunt about getting her help. We went home and John cried. He said he cried because he watched his mom villainize him and tell others that he just walked in and verbally abused her. He said it reminded him of the times he would fight with his dad because his mom would say Dan would just come from work and yell at her for no reason. I guess it was déjà vu for him. He was silent after she said that, so I do believe it struck a nerve with him. He decided to go NC for now. I did ask him if he was okay with me posting this part and he said yes. Before we went to Deb's house, I called a couple of counselors in our area to check availability, and our first couples therapy session is next month. It's a little while away. He called his provider today to check for a therapist within his insurance and got an appointment for himself for the 23rd. The ball is rolling and John seems like he's on the same page as me. I know this is killing him though. Dan called us and let us know he got Deb to calm down. He said he spoke to her as best as he could about her harming her own relationship with John, but she didn't want to hear it. Thank you, Reddit. I really didn't expect this to blow up like this. The advice and well wishes I got from this was so overwhelming, in a great way. While I should be happy, something about it all just makes me feel down. I hope that Debbie gets better and we can one day have her in our lives. Something about that comment about her mother made me hurt for little Debbie. Hopefully one day I'll get to hear her stories. Now I'm going back to my regular life and hopefully I won't ever have a dramatic update for you guys ever again. I'm tired of my ex-husband's wife wanting to be friends with me just because he cheated on both of us. Original post. I don't understand why I'm in this situation, and honestly I'm frustrated because even my own family tells me I'm the bad one here. I just need to vent and I don't need any advice or somebody telling me do this. I think you should tell her this. Or I would write her this or this. More than 17 years ago my ex-husband cheated on me with a woman I didn't know but she knew me. He left me for her. Our only daughter was a baby and I just moved on with my life. I'm never going to fight for a man who makes immature decisions without first thinking about the consequences. He married that woman. I went on with my life preferring to have a healthy co-parenting for my daughter. He never showed remorse and he had even told me that ours was always a mistake and that woman was the love of his life. That helped me to realize that he's a total dick and I don't need a man like that in my life. Now he cheated on her and for some reason this woman who always had a really cold and distant relationship with me is insisting on trying to talk with me every day. I found out about the infidelity from my daughter who wasn't affected by that. So I didn't think too much about it. The only thing that worried me was to know if he was going to be able to continue having our daughter at his house on weekends as always. But his wife started sending me messages explaining what happened when I never asked her that, and in the past I only spoke to her if her husband didn't answer my text to ask something about my daughter. It's obvious that she needs to talk about it. It doesn't matter if I answer dryly because she sends me long audio talking about it anyway. I mean, I understand that she needs to talk about her husband's infidelity and blah, but why me? I don't want to be rude but I don't care how she or he feels. In one of her audios she says, "You know how I feel now." Like, I guess. But that was 17 years ago. It's not the same. And if I'm being 100% honest, she can't compare herself to me at all. A woman who has just given birth to whom her husband tells her that he has been cheating on her for a long time with another woman who is not boring in bed and does know how to value him, vs. A woman who always knew that her husband is unfaithful and decided to marry him anyway. Anyway, I've tried to ignore her as much as I can, but even when I talk to my family or friends about this, almost all of them told me things like, "Oh, but she must feel lonely. But she wasn't to blame for being the other one." I think you should be more empathetic. We all need someone to talk to. Or my favorite one. She's not to blame for him being a cheater. You should understand her because she needs help. I understand that she is not to blame and he's the cheater. But she, a totally adult woman at that time, decided to marry a man she knew was sleeping with her while his wife was pregnant. So why should I now carry the weight of helping her when she never helped me by telling me, "Hey, your husband slept with me and that's really shitty because he's married with you." Or that's what I'd do if a married man flirts with me. Now, if she didn't do any of that, then why is it my duty as a feminist to force myself to be her friend? It doesn't make sense, and the worst thing is that almost all the women around me tell me that I should help her and be her ear when I don't want or feel empathy for her or for him. I think she and he knew very well what they were getting into. I don't understand why I should be her free therapist now. Being cheated on is not my whole personality. I don't need to talk about that 24/7 with her. I just chose to ignore her and that's what I'm going to continue doing because I just don't care how she feels even if I'm a bad feminist for not feeling empathy. Sorry, my first language is Spanish and I wrote everything pretty annoyed. Edit. No, I can't block her because she's still living with him and I need to have her contact me in case of an emergency with my daughter. And honestly, it's weird to have so many comments and even private messages from people wanting to tell me what I should send to her and even writing what I feel. I'm sorry, but there's no way I'm going to use the message of a stranger who doesn't know how I feel or the whole situation to say something to someone. I feel like a lot of people in the comments are reflecting their own traumas. Update. Hi, it's been a while since I posted and I just wanted to give a little update for people who were worried. First of all, my mother was a lover for a long time when I was a teenager plus during my adulthood. Their relationship lasted long years until he died. I think his wife never found out about his affair. That's why my mom manipulates me so much into not judging my ex's wife because no one chooses who to fall in love with. My mother always reflected herself on that woman and that's why she said that my ex-husband and his lover, now wife, are soulmates and I shouldn't get in the way. I was very young. At the time I could only lean on my mother for a little support and well, narcissists always catch vulnerable people. Nowadays I don't have much contact with her but my daughter spends time with my family. And about my friends, well, I am a feminist activist and opinions regarding lovers are divided because most of them are on the liberal side. Most of the times is seen as something misogynistic to judge them because they are single women and the man is the one we should blame, plus we need to be sororas with other girls. So I expected that reaction from most of them. I agree with that in most cases but not in this one. I can feel empathy when the woman did not know or when she is a minor being groomed but in this case I do not feel any pity because she knew well what she was doing. Women can also be mean and cruel. Women can also choose to be the bad guys in the story without someone manipulating us, because we are not weak and my ex's wife is that kind of woman. No one manipulated her into doing anything. I'm sorry, that explanation was perhaps unnecessary but there were people who didn't understand my family's and friends' behavior and honestly it feels good to vent. I have spoken with my ex's wife because honestly a few days ago I had a really stressful day and the last thing I needed was to see her messages in my WhatsApp so I just exploded. I planned to continue ignoring her, but that day I was upset about things about my work and I ended up telling her everything. I sent her an audio telling her that I'm not interested in her life or in the fact she's suffering. I told her that I am not her friend nor am I interested in being one. She never asked me for forgiveness and now she expects me to start the group of women cheated on by my ex. I told her other things and I would love to be able to post videos here. I told her that she knew very well what she got herself into. She knew well that my ex was capable of cheating on the mother of his baby but she still decided to marry him and live the stupid fantasy that she could change him and that she was different from all the other women he was with. God, I hate long audios but it was +5 whole minutes telling her that her situation and mine are nothing alike. I think that was my greatest catharsis. She got upset and we started arguing. It was quite tiring and the last thing I want is to have problems after 17 years of having normal co-parenting. I know they are not going to get divorced and that means I will have to live with her in my life forever, so I sent a message to my ex resending him one of the audios she sent me. I took the work to listen to them all and she never apologized to me. I don't need her apologies, BTW. I don't care but some comments asked me about that. They were just audios complaining and wanting us both to speak badly about him or wanting to have me as her free therapist. I told my ex to tell his wife to calm down and pay for a psychologist. He apologized to me and told me that they are both working on the marriage so they're at the stage where she still feels angry and insecure with him. Like, yes, obviously, idiot. So since I suffered the same, no, it's not the same, she felt that we could share the pain. He told me that they both started going to the online conferences of I don't know what couple who teach how to get over an infidelity. Sometimes I feel envious of people who can scam others so easily. Anyway, I told him that I'm not friends with her and that this affects our co-parenting so he should put a stop to her if she doesn't understand what I say. In the end he reluctantly told me he was going to talk to her and I've gone 3 days without any message from her, except today one where she just told me that my daughter was sleeping there. So I guess it worked. I don't care if they live a happy or miserable marriage. I don't care if she's happy knowing that he cheated on her but stays with him anyways. I just want to live in peace without getting into trouble with people who at +40 years old are still living mentally in high school. My sister banned me from her wedding, claiming her fiancé has feelings for me. Now he's refusing to marry her over it. Hello everyone, I'm Michelle, 20F, and I would greatly appreciate your feedback. Emily, 25F, is my older sister, and she is expected to marry Jonathan, 25M. Between them, everything appeared to be ideal. We all believed they were meant to be together, and they had been together for years. However, things have just taken a very odd and surprising turn, and now their wedding is in doubt. Why? My sister won't let me go to their wedding, therefore Jonathan has declined to marry her. Furthermore, Emily thinks Jonathan has feelings for me. I understand how crazy that sounds, but allow me to clarify. For background, I don't have a close relationship with either my parents or my sister. I kind of drifted away from them once I started college, but it's not like anything major happened to trigger a fallout. Since I moved out for school, I haven't really spent much time at home. I would usually travel or go to my grandparents' house during spring holidays rather than returning home. Simply said, it seemed like a better alternative than having to cope with the unpleasantness of being at home. The problem is that I'm not at all like my sister or parents. If it makes sense, we've never really clicked. I'm not truly a part of their universe, which is their own. They never seem to understand me, and to be honest, they never made an effort. They would all bond over something I didn't care about while I was growing up, and it seemed like I was speaking a foreign language anytime I brought up something I was interested in. They would simply listen, nod, then return the conversation to their own interests. So I gave up trying after a time. But here's what hurts the most. They made no attempt to contact me as I began to distance myself from them. They seemed to be quite content with me removing myself from their lives, almost as if they were glad to see me go. To be honest, that hurt. Family members should be aware when one of their own is gradually fading away, but they didn't appear to give a damn. It simply validated my long-held belief that I didn't belong with them. I eventually only went to see them for important occasions like birthdays and holidays. Even so though, I still felt more like a visitor to their lives. I would arrive, take care of the family business and then depart. The dialogue was always courteous but superficial. There was no genuine connection, no warmth. Additionally, Emily and I never shared the strong sisterhood that many siblings do. She has always been the family's golden kid, the one who did everything right, went down the route my parents desired and blended in flawlessly. I was the black sheep, the odd one out. They aren't awful individuals or anything, but the way they discreetly disparage me shows that they may be true bullies. You know how some small remarks can have a profound impact despite appearing innocuous at first glance? Yes, I would get that. I eventually came to the conclusion that it was simply preferable to avoid them as much as possible. Why place yourself in an uncomfortable and out-of-place situation? The problem is that when Jonathan joined us for Christmas dinner last year, I didn't feel totally invisible for the first time in a long time. My family has a way of making me feel as like I'm an outsider in my own house and that I don't belong. I wasn't treated that way by Jonathan though. Instead of treating me like the odd black sheep I often feel around my family, he was actually kind to me and spoke to me like a regular person. I didn't give it much thought at first. It was only basic politeness after all. However, Emily was very troubled by this for some reason. It's not as though Jonathan and I were engaging in a meaningful, private discussion. We simply discussed a variety of topics, including travel, school, amusing incidents at work, and other everyday topics. However, Emily seemed strange about it right away. I tried to ignore the cold stares she kept giving me during supper. That is, until she addressed me directly later that night. I will always remember that. She said, "I know what you're doing," and drew me aside. "You're attempting to take my boyfriend, even though you've always been envious of me." To be honest, I was stunned. Steal her man? I mean? Even so, where did that originate? She refused to let it go even after I told her she was being foolish and laughed it off. She insisted that I was being too nice with Jonathan and that he was acting strangely around me. It was such a crazy charge that I wasn't even sure how to react. Where the hell was this coming from? Being the center of attention has always been Emily's thing. My folks adore her, she's the ideal person. She's their golden child, so I understand. But saying that I attempted to snatch her fiancé. Even for her it was a new low. Like I normally do with her drama, I tried to ignore it. I assumed she was simply being insecure or worried for whatever reason because we're not close anyhow. The problem is that after that night, things became strange amongst us all. I didn't believe Emily could have gotten any farther away. She seemed to be deliberately avoiding me now, even though we were never close in the first place. She would either act as though she couldn't be bothered or give me one-word responses if I tried to speak with her. She would be glued to Jonathan's side during family get-togethers, as if she were claiming her space. It was absurd. Jonathan, however, pretended that nothing had changed. He remained courteous, amiable, and normal in my presence. What truly irritates me, I suppose, is how easily my family seems to agree with Emily. There were subtle clues, but no one ever spoke to me explicitly. Every time Emily and Jonathan were present, my mother would give me these strange stares. My dad, who is generally quite indifferent, began saying more about the value of connections and the necessity of family support. Everything was quite passive-aggressive. My anger increased as I gave it more thought. I've never been the kind to become entangled in the drama of others, much less that of my sister. Why would I suddenly get interested in Emily's fiancé when we almost ever speak outside of family gatherings? It was illogical. My grandparents informed me of Emily's engagement a few months later. Indeed, I was not even informed that my own sister was getting married. Finding out from my grandparents was a stomach punch, even if I wasn't exactly expecting her to send me a personalized invitation with love and glitter or anything at this point. You know, the kind that validates your preconceived notions about your family's lack of concern for you. I suppose I had been clinging to a sliver of hope that, despite the stress and distance, she would still think of me as having been a part of this significant occasion in her life. Hey, we're sisters, right? I thought. We may not be close, but I am still her family. That was obviously too much to ask for, though. When I learned about the engagement, I kept quiet to Emily. I initially assumed that she might have forgotten to tell me or that she was simply preoccupied with wedding preparations. For some reason, I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt. Even though I realized that sounds foolish. I assumed that she would ultimately give me a call or at the very least, send me a last-minute invitation. However, days stretched into weeks, and nothing happened. Crickets. Then I got an unexpected call from Emily. Since we hadn't actually spoken since that strange accusation over Christmas, I must admit that I was taken aback when her name appeared on my phone. I replied, attempting to sound informal, as if my own sister hadn't forgotten me entirely. She broke the news to him after a few awkward minutes of small talk. I'm not inviting you to the wedding. As I tried to take in what she had just said, I became silent for a moment. Even though I wasn't particularly eager to leave or anything, it still hurt to hear her say it aloud. When I asked her why, she gave me the most ridiculous explanation. I don't want you there because Jonathan has feelings for you. It will simply be uncomfortable. I had to laugh, laughed aloud indeed. It was unbelievable to me that this was taking place. To begin with, Jonathan has no affection for me, and even if he did, I wouldn't have stood up during the ceremony to declare my unwavering love for him. I didn't even want to argue because it was all so absurd. I simply hung up after saying, "Have a great wedding and happy marriage." It didn't really matter to me whether or not I was a part of her special day because I didn't need that turmoil in my life and, to be honest, we weren't close. Emily and I were living in two entirely separate universes, and I had long since accepted this. However, I simply needed to let things out and perhaps gain some external insight. Am I the only one who thinks this whole thing is crazy? Have any of you had a similar situation? I would appreciate any guidance. Update 1. I need to write this all down while it's still fresh in my head since yesterday was completely crazy. Emily's rehearsal dinner descended into total mayhem, and I was somehow pulled into the center of it all. My phone started exploding when I was spending a typical Thursday night cuddled up with my laptop, working on an assignment. I chose to ignore it at first. Lately, I've gotten fairly adept at that. However, in less than 10 minutes, I saw that I had 7 missed calls from my dad. My dad doesn't call more than once now. He's the kind that assumes you're busy if you don't respond right away and will try again later. 7 calls then? There was clearly a problem. He was trembling when I finally answered. He sounded like someone I had never heard before. "Michelle, you must visit the location immediately." Like a broken record, he said, "Right now." He just replied, "It's about Jonathan and Emily," when I inquired what was wrong. "Just come, please." His voice was so desperate that I was a little alarmed. But here's the thing. Did they really think that I would just drop everything and rush to their aid after all of the turmoil, allegations, and exclusion from the wedding? I told him just that. "Remember, Dad, I'm not attending this wedding." Emily was rather explicit about that. "Michelle, please," he replied. "Jonathan is unwilling to hold the wedding without your presence." I was halted in my tracks by that. What? My phone beeped with another call, this time from Mom, before I could comprehend that bomb. She was crying. Really crying when I turned over. She kept saying, "Your sister needs you." As if she had forgotten how they had all treated me during the previous few months. Listening to her cry about sisterly love and family loyalty when they had been okay without me until things went wrong was weird. Emily then called in a shambled, hardly comprehensible voice. Jonathan apparently showed up for the rehearsal dinner and asked me right away where I was. He lost it when Emily informed him I wasn't invited, but it was more subdued and disappointed than furious. He declared that he could not marry someone who would treat their own sister in such a manner in front of their friends, the wedding party, and both families. Recounting it, Emily sobbed into the phone. He claimed that after observing their treatment of me, he couldn't be a member of a family that would reject someone in such a way. "I was just like Mom and Dad," he stated, adding that he didn't want to be around such poisonous behavior. If I'm being honest, a significant portion of me felt validated. At last, someone had witnessed what I had endured for years. In fact, someone had spoken up and declared that it was unacceptable. Emily wasn't finished though. In between sobbing, She began outlining this intricate plan for me to visit the location and explain that there was only a major misunderstanding and that I was the one who decided not to attend the wedding, claiming that it was entirely my idea. She persisted in repeating, "We can fix this. Simply come and inform Jonathan that you have no intention of attending the wedding. Inform him that you were never left out. Michelle, please. I can't let him go." It was all breathtakingly audacious. It's absurd that after months of me behaving like a man-stealing villain and being told outright that I wasn't allowed to her wedding because her fiancé could be attracted to me, she wanted me to lie in order to keep her connection intact after making me feel like trash in my own family. I let her cry on the other end of the line for a long time without saying anything. Then, as coolly as I could, I said, "I won't lie to you, Emily. You are now dealing with the repercussions of your decisions to ignore me and treat me as though I didn't exist. Fixing it is not my responsibility. But he'll hear you out." She almost let out a scream. "He believes in you." I answered, "Perhaps he trusts me because I've never given him a reason not to. Perhaps he has doubts about your true identity because of anything he perceives in the way you have treated me. In any case, I won't be attending the event and I won't tell lies to improve your reputation." She was still complaining when I hung up. I then made myself a cup of tea, switched off my phone entirely, and took a seat to truly think about what had just transpired. My phone continued to light up with notifications over the course of the following several hours. I examined it and found voicemails from my parents, missed calls from Emily's pals, and texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. The entire family seemed to have banded together to try to coerce me into cleaning up Emily's mess. But what do you know? For the first time in my life, I was very sure that avoiding them was the proper thing to do. Jonathan alone had been able to see through their actions. Not because of anything I said or did, but because of how they treated me, he had come to that conclusion. And to be honest, that seemed like the fullest confirmation I could have hoped for. Last night, I went to bed without using my phone, and I slept better than I have in months. For once, let them handle the consequences of their own behavior. I'm done cleaning up other people's crap and being the family scapegoat. My grandparents, who are the only relatives I still communicate with, informed me this morning that Jonathan is not returning calls from Emily or my parents. It seems that he has informed his family that the wedding is final. My parents are working feverishly to contain the damage, Emily is inconsolable, and I'm just sitting here, at last content with my choice to keep my distance. I realize this is lengthy, but I had to say it all. I appreciate all of the comments on my previous post that affirmed my choice to keep my distance from my family. You were okay. Sometimes it's best to take a back seat and let others deal with the fallout from their own behavior. Update 2. Many of you inquired about my early years and the reasons behind my prolonged estrangement from my family. Since it's a somewhat weighty story, I didn't delve into it in my first post, but in light of recent events, I believe this is a good moment to explore some of it. The problem is that I suffer from social anxiety. I always had the feeling that something was wrong with me as a child, but I was never able to articulate it. However, my parents were traditionalists who thought mental health conditions were merely pretexts. They would frequently say things like, "You need to toughen up," or "You're just being dramatic." They would label me weak or lazy if I ever showed signs of anxiety or a panic attack, as if I was choosing to feel that way. When I look back, I can see a lot of warning signs. I had this big presentation for English class when I was 15. The thought of standing in front of 30 students was a recipe for a social anxiety disorder. I had trouble sleeping the night before, and I felt physically ill the morning of. I begged to stay at home and informed my parents. My father's reaction? "Your nervousness won't cause life to stop. Quit making a huge deal out of everything." I ultimately experienced a severe panic attack in front of the class. My voice began breaking. Some children even started chuckling, and my hands were shaking so much that I was unable to grip my notes. The room seemed to be whirling, but I was unable to go out. Rather than offering consolation, my mother simply remarked, "See, you made it through. All that drama was in vain." Everything was made worse by Emily, who was the ideal sister. She was the student body president, the debate team captain, and pretty much everything else that I couldn't be due to my anxiety. When she had large gatherings of her friends, people would remark that I was the weird sister who never came out of her room. I heard Emily say to her pals once, "Yeah, she's just antisocial. She believes that she is too good to be with anyone." My life changed when I was in college. My first semester was a total meltdown for me. Being away from home, adjusting to new social circumstances, and attempting to balance my anxiety while attending classes became too much to handle. I recall feeling like I was dying while I sat in my dorm room, gasping for air. I was almost dragged to the college counseling center by my roommate, who, bless her, saw something was really wrong. The first person who truly listened to me was Dr. Martinez, whom I met there. She didn't urge me to toughen up or minimize my emotions. Rather, she assisted me in comprehending my condition. Dr. Martinez suggested seeing a psychiatrist for a proper diagnosis after a few sessions. It was like finally giving the monster I'd been battling my entire life a name when I received that diagnosis of social anxiety disorder. It wasn't seeking attention or being dramatic, as my family had always insisted. It was a legitimate ailment, and more significantly, it was treatable. The sessions of treatment opened my eyes. I learned from Dr. Martinez that my family's actions were not only unsupportive but also purposefully damaging. She gave me advice on setting limits, advocating for myself, and identifying harmful behaviors. At that point, I began to intentionally distance myself from my family. What really bothers me, though, is that my parents totally rejected my diagnosis when I tried to explain it to them. "These doctors are just trying to make money by labeling everything a disease," my mother genuinely said. "I was merely using big words to justify my antisocial behavior," Emily added, rolling her eyes. "I made one final attempt to explain things to them last Thanksgiving, before all of this wedding turmoil began. I had prepared an entire speech on social anxiety, complete with research and figures. Michelle, when are you going to stop making excuses and start living in the real world?" My dad interrupted me mid-sentence. I came to the realization that they would never change at that point. They would never make an effort to comprehend. They had an unchangeable perception of me as the challenging kid, the dramatic one, the problem. And what do you know? It was strangely liberating to realize that. It made it easier for me to cease looking for their understanding or acceptance. In retrospect, I can see how this tendency directly contributed to the wedding scenario, my parents' hasty acceptance of Emily's story without even challenging it, and Emily's rapid leap to believe I was stealing her fiancé. It's all a part of their long-held belief that I'm the one who causes difficulty and should be managed. Jonathan saw right through this. He observed how they handled me, how they minimized my emotions, and how they used me as the blame for everything. And he called it out for what it was. Poisonous conduct, in contrast to everyone else in my family's social circle who simply accepted their own version of reality. I suppose I'm attempting to convey that this wedding drama wasn't an isolated incident. The result of years of family dynamics in which I was consistently portrayed as the bad guy, the problem child, and the one who needed to be fixed. Perhaps that's why Jonathan's choice feels so righteous to me. Someone else finally noticed what I've been going through for years. Yes, that is the backstory that many of you requested. It clarifies why I'm not in a rush to make repairs right now. I've spent far too many years attempting to change how my family views me, to get their understanding, and to gain their acceptance. I finished that. Accepting that certain individuals, even members of your family, will never understand or accept you is sometimes the healthiest thing you can do. Update 3. A month has passed since everything went wrong, and I must now reveal the last portion of this tale. At least now I can say that what began as a wedding drama is really finished, even though it has grown into something I never could have predicted. Emily lost everything when her wedding was called off. My new phone number was somehow obtained by her, and she shared it with everyone she knew. I was suddenly inundated with hundreds of hateful comments from strangers, her acquaintances, and distant family members. Guilt-tripping and downright intimidation were among the threats. The vandalism followed. Classic Emily, who used to do this to girls she detested in high school, was the first to leave eggs in my car. She escalated when that failed to get the desired response. I can't even remember how many times I discovered my mailbox ruined, my car vandalized, or my apartment door covered in offensive notes. She cut all 4 of my car tires and left a threatening note in her distinctive handwriting, which was the last straw. My parents consciously chose to ignore Emily's actions during all of this. "Girls will be girls," or "you need to be more understanding of your sister's pain," was their standard response to every event. They dismissed it as Emily just wanting to talk, even after I showed them security camera footage of her attempting to break into my flat. However, I was ready because of this incredible Reddit community, especially those who suggested that I install security cameras and record everything. I learned from the attorney you suggested that this constituted criminal harassment and vandalism rather than just family drama. Using witness accounts, video evidence, photos, and hundreds of threatening messages, we created a solid case. Emily ultimately realized she had gone too far when my lawyer provided our evidence along with the cease and desist notice. Her attempted break-in was captured on security tape, which was especially damaging. She attempted to bargain through her own attorney, stating that if I dropped everything, she would cover the damages. However, I declined. This was about accountability and penalties, not money. The court case proceeded quickly and decisively. Emily was accused of attempting to break and enter, criminal harassment and vandalism. She was given a permanent restraining order, required therapy, and a 1-year suspended sentence. Given the deliberate nature of her conduct and the substantial evidence of her increasing behavior, the judge was especially severe. My parents' response to the decision was expected. For destroying your sister's life over a few pranks, they accused me of being callous. In fact, they advised me to just move away if I felt unsafe, after I told them that Emily had repeatedly harassed me, damaged my belongings, and attempted to break into my house. I never intended to speak with them again after that. An out-of-court settlement was reached in the civil litigation. In addition to the damages for emotional distress and lost wages, Emily had to pay for all the harm she had caused. Her campaign of harassment on social media has cost me a number of freelancing businesses. More significantly, the settlement included a non-contact clause that prohibits our parents from serving as middlemen or flying monkeys any longer. According to my lawyer, Emily and my parents' concerns about their reputations played a role in the speedy settlement. It turns out that their concern for the opinions of their country club pals is far greater than their concern for doing the right thing. Normal. Since then, I've relocated to a new apartment in a building that is secure and under constant observation. My social media accounts have been closed down. My contact information has been totally updated, and my clients have been incredibly understanding of the situation. Someone who heard about my situation and was impressed by my handling of it even extended an offer of employment to me. The most unexpected result of it all? For the first time in my life, I feel liberated. The expectations and criticisms of my family are not weighing on me. I am no longer the scapegoat. I'm just Michelle, creating my own life according to my own rules. I'm neither the dramatic nor the challenging child. My life was actually altered by the Reddit community, who helped me through everything. In court, your recommendations on documentation and security precautions were crucial. When I started to doubt myself, your encouraging remarks kept me going, and your accounts of similar situations made me understand I wasn't alone. Remember that sharing DNA does not give someone the right to mistreat you if you're dealing with toxic family members. Walking away and letting them deal with the fallout from their actions is sometimes the healthiest course of action. It's about establishing limits and demanding respect, not about getting even. With therapy, my social anxiety is improving, but it's still there. It turns out that a lot of it was related to the continuous criticism and gaslighting I experienced as a child. Who would have thought that removing poisonous individuals might be such a successful treatment? I will no longer be updated now that this phase of my life is genuinely over. I'm concentrating on my education, profession, and creating a new network of chosen family members for support. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who supported me and followed my tale. You gave me the confidence to leave and the strength to advocate for myself. Living well is said to be the best kind of retaliation. The best closure, I would add, is knowing that you have finally advocated for yourself. I'm tired of being used as a scapegoat or victim by others. I've taken control of my life and will never look back. Reddit, thank you for everything and goodbye. I was uninvited from a wedding, left humiliated in the rain, while my boyfriend stayed at the event. Am I overreacting? Original post. Today, my 24M partner and I 24F, let's call him Eric, were invited to the wedding of one of his oldest friends from school. We received our save the date months ago, and the invite was addressed to Eric and Vicky. Our invite stated we were invited for the whole shebang, the service, the breakfast and the evening reception. Our RSVP required both of our dietary requirements for the breakfast, which we replied to ages ago. I thought this was pretty awesome and generous of the bride and groom, as I had never met either of them and Eric was only close with the bride, so it was a very nice gesture. The wedding is a few hours away from where we live and since neither of us drive, I booked train tickets in advance which came to about £60 each return and an Airbnb, which worked out at £90 between us. We don't earn a lot so this is quite a big spend to justify. However, since they had invited us to the whole wedding we thought it would be rude not to go. The bride also specified colors we should wear, so I bought a new outfit since I didn't have anything formal that would be suitable. Not the end of the world, but with Christmas coming up it was a bit difficult and I had to be really frugal all through November to make it work. Total spend was probably double what I would spend monthly on fun stuff like going out for dinner or drinks or new clothes. We got to the service and it was beautiful, the bride looked lovely and it was very emotional. I get nervous at weddings, couldn't say why. And so I hadn't eaten beforehand, figuring the 4-course breakfast would fill me up nicely. After the ceremony, we went straight into the venue to have drinks and sit down at tables. We were towards the back of the line into the venue and so half the congregation had already sat down. We glanced at the seating plan, saw Eric's name and headed over. There was no place setting for me. Eric found his name, but there weren't any free seats at the table. Eric sat down, and I asked an usher whether there was a mistake. He didn't know, so he waved over the bride. She and I had never met before, but she seemed friendly. Until she opened her mouth. "Oh no, you're not part of the breakfast. The invitation was just for the reception and service. You're welcome to come back later." This was in front of most of the guests who had already sat down, in a big venue, probably 140-ish seats. The usher suggested I go to the pub. Eric didn't know what to do but didn't want to cause a scene, so he stayed put and quiet. I quite literally have never felt so embarrassed and humiliated in my life. I left and it was raining heavily. I hadn't brought an umbrella, since it was an indoor wedding. And being in a rural place, I had to walk about 20 minutes to get anywhere else. The usher had suggested a pub where the other guests are, so I just kept walking, but my shoes were literally ruined and soaked through. As well as being pretty damn cold because it's December and I was dressed for a wedding. I got to the pub to find a handful of merrymakers drinking heavily, at 2 p.m., in wedding clothes, introduced myself kind of awkwardly as they were total strangers, and they were luckily really nice. They invited me to sit with them and tell them about the service. All of them had only been invited to the reception. I asked one of them if I could see their invite, and it was crystal clear that they were evening guests. There was no mention of the service or the breakfast, nor their dietary requirements. I apparently was the only person who was invited, and then uninvited, to the whole do. I sat with them and had some food, because I was starving, but they all started leaving to get ready at about 4 p.m. Being a total stranger, I didn't think it best to ask to come with them, but I had never been to this town before and besides Eric, I didn't know anybody. Since being ejected at 1:30 p.m.-ish, I was expected to just hang until 7:30 p.m. when the reception started. So I left. I felt so unwelcome and unwanted that I just wanted to go home. The evening will start in about half an hour, without me, but I just can't bring myself to attend knowing that half the guests watched me being asked to leave by the bride herself. I traded in my train ticket, which was a return for tomorrow, and now I'm traveling back alone. I texted Eric to tell him, but he didn't respond. I've been holding back tears since I was ejected, 6 hours ago, and I feel completely torn. I don't understand what happened with the invite, whether it was a mistake or whether I was just supposed to know that it was only for Eric, despite being addressed to both of us, despite asking for both of our dietary requirements, despite explicitly stating we were invited to the whole wedding. Part of me feels like I should have gone to the evening reception too, but I'm soaked through, my hair and makeup look awful, my shoes are unwearable. I am barefoot on a really gross floor right now, and I'm freezing. I look like a mess and I feel so stupid. Did I mess up here? I feel like I've just been totally fucked over, and I'm really upset that Eric didn't stand up for me or say anything or leave the breakfast with me, although I think that's less because of malice and more that he's just a bit hopeless when put on the spot. I've never heard of a wedding where you invite a plus one, by name, but then they aren't invited to as much of the wedding as the other half of the couple. Nobody else at the wedding had this happen. I don't see how it can be personal since I've never met any of them before. I'm really upset and can't wrap my head around how weird today has been. If this happened to you, what would you do? TLDR, went to a wedding, got uninvited halfway through. Am I overreacting by being hurt? Edit. So this blew up way more than I expected. Thank you everyone for your words of support, it's really helped and I've gone from a wobbly wet mess to a cackling harpy with my big glass of wine. You guys don't hold back on your opinions and I kinda love it. It's nearly bedtime here, Eric stayed at the party and presumably is still there. I came home and felt a lot better knowing how shitty a situation this was. Karma's a bitch, and when they go low we go high, so I'm going to go to bed and sleep on it and think about next steps in the morning. A lot of people think I should dump Eric, whereas that had never crossed my mind. I was mostly pissed off with the bride and the MOH who may have been involved too, I don't know. Eric will be coming home sometime tomorrow, and we're going to talk. I want to hear his piece because he's been drinking since lunchtime. He might just be a dum-dum rather than a full-blown asshole. Either way, no wind-up sudden decisions right now. I will try to come back and update as and when anything else happens. Thanks everyone. 3 relevant comments. Plain truthiness. The person who messed up was the bride, which is an utter word I don't use but she is, and Eric, who is appalling. I absolutely cannot believe that he didn't walk out with you. What the hell was he thinking? Did he used to date the bride or the bride's sister? Oopie. Funny you say that. The maid of honor is his ex. Although we were not aware until we saw her name in the wedding booklet at the ceremony that she would even be there. However, there is a lot of bad blood between them. If she was going to intervene to remove anybody, it would have been him. Update. Basically, I went to a wedding of my boyfriend's oldest friend from school and got uninvited from the wedding breakfast as it was starting. My boyfriend stayed at the wedding. I hadn't expected the big reaction to my first post, and just want to say thank you to everyone who gave advice and was supportive. I was feeling super shitty when I initially posted, and after an hour of drinking wine and reading your comments I felt a lot more sane and calm. I wanted to clarify a few things that people were confused about or that weren't clear in my first post. I'm in the UK and our weddings are different to the way weddings are held in the US. Traditionally, there is a ceremony, the wedding breakfast, which is a sit-down 3-course meal. Although it's called breakfast, it is usually in the afternoon, followed by speeches, and then an evening reception which is like a disco. It's not uncommon for people to invite only relatives and close friends to the ceremony and breakfast, then invite lots of evening guests for the reception. However, it is uncommon to invite somebody to the ceremony and reception, but not the breakfast, as then they are kind of left to entertain themselves somewhere for 6 hours. Having talked to friends and coworkers since last weekend, what happened to me was a serious no-no in terms of etiquette. Me and Eric have been together for nearly a year and a half, we live together, and we have a pretty strong relationship. He had no past romantic connections with the bride, I'll call her Marie, which some people were asking about. They went to school together from the age of 4, 10, and remained in touch as pen pals, Facebook friends since then. They rarely see each other in person, and the wedding was the first time he would see her in about 2 years. There was zero phone signal at the venue. We noticed this when we arrived for the ceremony and were a little annoyed as the wedding had a hashtag which we couldn't exactly tweet about with no signal. This is important later. We didn't know this until we arrived at the wedding, but the maid of honor, Helen, was Eric's ex-girlfriend. They were together for 3 years, and she cheated on him and dumped him. They have a lot of bad blood and do not have any contact with each other. Okay, so on to the update. After leaving the ceremony I got straight on the train and went back to my hometown. I was on the train when I wrote my first post. When I got home, I told my parents everything and they weren't particularly impressed, and like most of the posters here they were perplexed that Eric hadn't come with me. My mum gave me a big hug, ran me a bath and poured me a glass of wine, and I just tried to relax and forget about my day from hell. I still hadn't heard from Eric, but texted him to let him know I was home safe and would see him tomorrow. Eric texted me back at about 9 p.m., asking me what I meant by home or the Airbnb that we had booked nearby to the venue. I clarified, and he said, "Okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Love you so much, X." Didn't really know what to make of it since the whole day had just been such a massive fuck up. So I finished my wine, watched a Disney movie and went to bed. The next morning, given I still hadn't really heard from Eric at all, I assumed he would be getting in at about midday, so I got up early and started wrapping Christmas presents. At 8 a.m. I heard a key in the door and what do you know, it's Eric, still in his creased suit, with red eyes and looking like death. He wasn't really making sense, so I made him have a shower and warm up, made coffee and decided to talk once he was looking human again. We sat down together and pieced together his side of the story. Basically, once I had left, Eric was absolutely livid with Marie. He had frozen like a deer in headlights when she was asking me to go and was kicking himself that he hadn't done the right thing. About 10 minutes after I left, Marie turned around and said, "Oh, actually, a few people haven't turned up. Get Vicky to come back, we have space for her now." And Eric had tried to call me. Because there was no phone signal anywhere near the venue, he couldn't get through, and Marie pretty much immediately said, "Oh well, never mind, she didn't want to be here anyway." Which obviously was a pile of crap, and made Eric feel rubbish. The meal was a very formal, sit-down affair, so he just kind of grinned and bore it, assuming I would be coming back in the evening. Eric was the only person mentioned in the speeches, by Marie's father, who wasn't a family member, and apparently it was clear to everyone how disappointed he was that I wasn't there to share it with him. When I texted him at about 6 p.m. to let him know I was going home, he never received it. He was only able to text me at 9 p.m. by hiking down the road for 5 minutes to find a signal. All the while his ex Helen was being sickly sweet, asking where I was, why didn't I want to come and enjoy the party, was I shy? Apparently with quite the evil glint in her eye, like she had got exactly what she'd wanted. Neither of us knew she was the MOH until we got there, and given their bad relationship, Eric was pretty pissed off that Marie had failed to mention she had such a prominent role in the wedding. Whether Helen was behind the seating error, I don't know, but if she was, then Marie was just as bad in enabling it to happen. So Eric stayed at the wedding, miserably, and went back to the Airbnb afterwards alone. He barely slept, feeling angry at Marie and Helen for fucking with us and at himself for not sticking up for me, and left at 4:30 a.m. to get the first train home, hence why he was back at our place so early. He wasn't really apologetic to me at all, he didn't really seem to see how it was shitty for me. He more felt like he had been insulted by the situation and let down by his oldest friend. He is cutting off Marie and doesn't want anything else to do with her. So, yeah. That was Eric's take on the whole thing. To be honest, I was pretty pissed that in all of this, he hadn't really considered how I felt, or what it had been like for me getting thrown out of the wedding. While what he had gone through was pretty crummy, he at least had been warm, dry and well fed. The indignation of your girlfriend being removed from an event you're at isn't really as bad as being the girlfriend, getting soaked in the rain, feeling humiliated and all the rest. So we talked, and I laid out why I wasn't okay with what had happened and why his reaction wasn't okay. He can be a bit of a lemon sometimes, and this feels like one of those times. He didn't step up to the plate, he just let the world wash over him and acted as a bystander. I'm still hurt by his actions and he still hasn't really apologized properly. I don't know if he understands that he did wrong too. But this isn't a deal breaker for me. It's a heavy straw on the camel's back, but the camel is still standing. We have a really lovely Christmas coming up, and after a really long autumn of working hard, all I want is to go back to the happy place we were before this fuck up, and honestly I don't want to think about it. So, I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. I'm not going to break up with him over this, but it's a big dark mark on his record. As far as I'm concerned, he needs to get a lot of extra credit to get a pass this year, to use a terrible analogy, and I expect him to step up and really try to do better from now on. It's not really an ultimatum, but I'm willing to put this behind us if he can prove to me that he's invested in trying harder in this relationship from now on. If he doesn't, then I won't be sticking around. I love him a lot, but he needs to have my back, and be empathetic to what I'm going through. I'm sorry that this wasn't the victorious breakup update so many of you wanted, but I want a nice happy Christmas together. I'm not ruling it out as an option if things don't improve. But I want to give him another chance to prove this relationship is worth it. TLDR, Eric came home the next day. We talked, we're still together. Top comment. Throw _ the switch. Things to think about. If Marie said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he come and physically find you after his call didn't go through? If Marie said only 10 minutes after you left that you could stay, why didn't he go and find a signal to call you, 5 minutes away, after his call didn't go through? Why didn't he try and find a signal to call you, again, only 5 minutes away, until 9 p.m.? Relevant comments. It's all mine now. So I know a lot of you guys are going to drag me over hot coals for this one, but we're still together. Yeah, that's the important thing. You haven't lost him. And as for dragging you over coals, you're going to be the one to live with this selfish, conceited carpet, so really there's nothing more I can add that would push the point home more than some more occasions where he just dumps you at the side of the road because he's offended by how they disrespected him by treating you badly. Throw the switches comment makes a good point. He didn't even try to catch you up, go down the road to contact you, or even leave in disgust, because all he could think about was his own hurt feelings. You've got a great life coming. OP. I've set a deadline in my head where I need to see significant improvement in a few areas of the relationship, which I have told him is important if he wants us to stay together, and if that doesn't happen, I'm gone. If he messes up big time before then, I'm gone. Just giving him one last chance to pull himself up by his bootstraps and prove it's worth staying for. Paid for my wife's family vacation, but sister-in-law excluded me. At checkout, when she expected me to cover her bill, I made her pay. I never imagined feeling this depressed while lounging in an upscale Miami Beach resort. A family vacation that was supposed to be unforgettable has become a nightmare because of my sister-in-law, Ella, 38F. I am accompanied by my wife, Ray, 42F, her aging parents, 76M and 70F, and Ella. We have been married for 10 amazing years. I'm already at my wit's end because of Ella's treatment of me just 2 days into this vacation. Over the past 10 years, Ray and I have established a pleasant life together. We have both put in a lot of effort to get to the senior positions we currently hold at our respective firms. Our success is reflected in our lifestyle. To break up the routine of our hectic lives, we take at least 3 large vacations a year in addition to a number of weekend excursions. We are able to travel widely since we decided not to have children. We've made it a point to take Ray's parents along on one of our yearly vacations for the past 2 years. Her mother finds it difficult to travel with her father alone as his health has been progressively deteriorating. The trip this summer was particularly meaningful because Ray's father had mentioned that he had always wanted to go to Miami, where he and his wife had gone on their honeymoon almost 50 years prior. He spoke of it with a certain fervor that betrayed a dread that this would be his final opportunity to relive those treasured recollections. Given how expensive a week in Miami would be, I promptly turned down his offer to help with the costs. I wanted to do this for these individuals since they have been treating me like their own kid for the past 10 years. I can easily afford such costs because of my financial circumstances, and it was well worth the money to witness their happiness upon returning to Miami. When Ella asked to go with us, our journey took a very different turn. Ella has always been in a hard spot financially, unlike Ray and me. Her husband's salary hardly meets the necessities for her 3 school-age children. She would always remark that she hadn't been able to afford a real vacation since her honeymoon whenever we shared pictures from our trips. She came up to us directly this year about going to Miami. I consented even though I knew I would be responsible for all of her costs. Family should support family, after all. Ella's behavior seemed strange from the moment we arrived in Miami. Only a few hours after arriving at our beach resort, the first warning sign arrived. Ella recommended that the family take a picture in front of the breathtaking ocean scenery. In order to get everyone in the photo, I grabbed my phone and prepared to set the timer. She stopped me at that point. "Oh, would you just snap the photo for us? Mom, Dad, Ray and I are the only 4 people we desire." Her remarks were like a kick to the face. I said nothing, figuring they might have preferred a single picture of their original family. However, this was not an isolated incident. Ella made it the central topic of our trip. She would find a way to keep me out of every restaurant, tourist attraction, and special occasion. She kept saying, "Oh, just the 4 of us," or, "This one's just for family." I took over as the official photographer, spending all of my time behind the lens rather than creating memories with my wife and in-laws. Even worse, Ella began sharing these pictures on social media, fabricating a story about this family vacation in which I didn't exist. My in-laws would encourage me to participate in the pictures, and Ray would occasionally step in and stress that I was also family, but Ella always managed to sway the situation until I was back in front of the camera. For their ideal family reunion, I seemed to be nothing more than a walking ATM and personal photographer. I was looking forward to unwinding in the immaculate pool with its stunning ocean view after a long day of trekking and touring. I was about to enter the water when Ella hit me once again. "Will you be able to stay out a while? We want a picture of a girl that only includes Mom, Ray and me." What began as a seemingly simple request ended up involving me standing by the pool for an hour while Ella staged an ongoing photo session. The women appeared first, followed by a picture of a sibling and then another original family picture. Every time I attempted to join them, she would come up with a new combination that conveniently left me out. If my presence was such a hassle, I couldn't help but wonder why she had bothered to come on this vacation. The following day's boat ride incident was far more obvious. When we got to the tourist destination, they provided calm boat rides along the shore. Families with 4 people would love the boat's 2 rows of 2 seats apiece. However, we were only 5. Ella stepped right in with her idea before anybody else could offer a reasonable rotation scheme. She insisted that this arrangement would be perfect for family photos, and made arrangements for Ray's parents to sit together in 1 row while she took the seat next to Ray in the second. In the subsequent boat, I found myself surrounded by strangers. They also purchased a memento of their boat ride with the family. This is the text, punctuated and clearly divided into paragraphs. Currently, Ella's social media feed features the picture. My entire holiday experience was well captured in the souvenir photo from the boat excursion, when I was awkwardly crammed between strangers as my wife and her family had wonderful memories without me. I couldn't help but observe that I was always the one who had to be left out of any situation. Even though I was paying for this entire vacation, Ella never once volunteered to trade places or take turns being the odd one out. It was the same for dinner at the fancy seafood restaurant. I had been looking forward to this reservation for weeks, particularly asking for a prime table with an unhindered view of the sunset at one of Miami's most upscale waterfront restaurants. The hostess escorted us to a circular table for 6 when we got there, which was well situated to capture the golden hour light across the ocean. Ray's parents were seated across from us, and I had imagined us sitting together and taking in the scenery while we shared this beautiful time. Since Ella was a last-minute addition to our trip, she might have easily grabbed a seat on the side. Rather, Ella sat beside Ray before anyone could even bring out a chair, and her parents, of course, took the best seats. With my back to the sunset, I had deliberately planned this dinner around. I was forced into the worst conceivable position, between Ray's parents and the crowded server station. Ella's true colors came out when Ray attempted to defend me by proposing that we reorganize the seating. Telling Ray to stop being so clingy and reminding everyone that this was a family holiday, she yelled at her sister. As the evening wore on, the dinner only grew worse. I made an effort to engage in the discussion in the hopes of discovering some points of agreement, but Ella had other ideas. She would purposefully direct the conversation away from me and toward things like high school escapades, family inside jokes, and childhood recollections whenever I tried to participate. Ella would constantly interrupt and reroute the conversation, even when Ray and her parents attempted to incorporate me by providing background or making connections between stories and current affairs. I felt like an outsider peering in at my own dinner table because of the unbreakable wall of shared history she built. I had stopped attempting to join in by the time dessert came. It was during our scheduled spa day that the last insult occurred. I had carefully set up private suites in the resort's opulent spa, one for Ella alone, one for her parents, and one for Ray and myself. I believed that the four of us could still enjoy the spa treatments together until my father-in-law opted to stay back at the beach because he wasn't feeling well. Ella, however, saw another chance to keep me out. She smiled and said they needed a girls' day at the spa, so I should keep her father company instead. She was once again forcing me to cancel an event I had organized and paid for, and she was using my father-in-law's illness as leverage to make me appear self-centered if I objected. The manipulation was clear. Despite not going as planned, the day ended up being better than I had anticipated. My father-in-law and I had one of our most sincere talks ever while we were sitting on the beach. We connected in a level we had never experienced before as he told us stories about his life and gave insights from his years of expertise. I wanted to vent my aggravation that had been building up over the trip by telling him how his younger daughter was treating me. However, I couldn't bring myself to burden him with family trouble when I watched him relish the ocean wind and share his recollections with such contentment. One night in our hotel room, I had attempted to have a private conversation with Ray about this. She admitted that I felt upset, but her remark only made me more perplexed. She explained how their father's frequent military deployments had affected their childhood and implied that Ella's actions might not have been deliberate. Ella may be frantically attempting to relive those lost family times as their father's health deteriorates. They seldom ever took formal family holidays together. I started to doubt myself after hearing Ray's explanation. Did I come out as too sensitive? I was paying for the vacation, so was it improper of me to expect to be included? I realized how much Ella's actions had damaged my confidence since I was even doubting my right to be wounded. Update 1. The influx of encouraging comments I received after posting about my difficulties online confirmed what I'd been feeling all along. People remarked that Ella's exclusionary behavior was too regular to be coincidental and that her behaviors demonstrated deliberate aim rather than careless oversight. Their viewpoints made it clearer to me that this was about fundamental respect and acknowledgement as a family member, not about having the right to be included just because I paid. My wife attempted to use their early experiences to justify her sister's actions, but the truth was more straightforward. Whatever Ella's reason, what she was doing wasn't acceptable. The persistent isolation and disrespect had gotten out of hand by the last few days of our journey to Miami. My breaking point was finally reached the morning before we left. In our hotel room, I sought some alone time with Ray and confronted her about her passive attitude during the trip, but her response remained centered on maintaining harmony. Although she admitted to observing Ella's actions, she maintained that confronting her would just cause drama and ruin what might be one of their father's final family vacations. Although what she said made sense, it seemed like yet another betrayal. Once more, family unity was being sacrificed at the expense of my sentiments. Something changed inside of me at that very instant. I nodded in agreement with Ray's request to move on, but my mind was already working out a strategy. Ella had joyfully savored the opulent lodging and facilities I was offering her, and she had spent the entire vacation treating me like an unwanted stranger. She seems to have forgotten that I was paying for every meal, activity, and spa treatment she had received during this entire trip. Maybe it was time to let her know exactly what it meant to pretend that I wasn't a member of the family. I started my strategy on the last morning we were in Miami. Claiming that Ella and I would follow, I casually advised Ray to take her parents to the airport before us. Ray quickly saw through my motives. "I understand what you're attempting to accomplish," she muttered. Her little nod was all the acknowledgement I needed. "Sure you know," I said, "and now you can remain neutral, as you have been for the whole trip." Ray appeared prepared to let karma run its course after observing her sister routinely keep me out of every family gathering for a week. When they were gone, I brought my well-thought-out plan to the front desk. The hotel's billing method was advantageous to me. All extra fees accrued during the stay were paid at checkout, even though the room rates had been paid in advance. Assuming I would pay for everything, this included every room service order, spa treatment and poolside cocktail Ella had freely consumed. In an attempt to justify it for tax purposes, I asked the management to divide the bills by suite. The request was so routine that the manager didn't even bat an eye. I couldn't help but think about how Ella had never considered the financial or emotional consequences of her actions as I stood there watching him come to terms with the separation. That was about to change. I paid for my own accommodation and my in-laws' suite and then waited for the big reveal. Ray's father's mobility challenges and wheelchair arrangements required additional time, so she and her parents were already en route to the airport. Ella and I were alone in the hotel lobby after that. Ella's face was devoid of color as she gazed at the itemized bill in her hands when the manager summoned her down to settle her account. The sum was astounding, likely many months' worth of her typical spending. As reality struck in, her uncertainty turned to panic as her gaze shifted between the bill and my face. "You're not covering mine?" Then I remained calm. "I've already paid for my family. You can cover for yourself." Ella struggled with her credit card and gave it to the manager, her hand trembling a little. My suspicions were only verified by the declined transaction notification. She had been living far beyond her means for the entire week, confident that I would pay for it. Her credit limit was not even close to covering half of her debt, even when the manager swiped her card once again. She was now feeling the effects of all those girls-only spa days and fancy dinners, and this time, her assigned ATM wasn't saving her. It was pure theater for the next half hour in the hotel lobby. Ella paced back and forth, attempting to come up with a plan for dealing with this sudden issue. She would look at me frantically every few minutes, obviously hoping that I would give in and offer to pay, but I remained seated on the comfortable couch in the lobby, appearing composed while relishing every moment of her situation. I knew that if she had just apologized for her actions during the journey, I could have ended her agony with a swipe of my card. However, Ella's pride prevented her from doing so. Rather, as though she still had the right to my money after a week of treating me like an unwanted invader, she wanted me to offer to help. She finally took the call she had been putting off. As she described the circumstances, I could hear her husband's anger rising over the phone. He was demanding to know how she could spend so carelessly, as the bill she had accrued was almost equal to his entire monthly salary. The money was finally transmitted to pay the account after what seemed like an eternity of difficult conversations and perhaps some desperate promises on her part. Ella sat quietly in the taxi on the way to the airport, perhaps still analyzing her husband's reaction upon her return home. Her problems were far from done, but she was unaware of this. She found out I hadn't finished her flight check-in when we got to the airport, which was already getting close to departure time. She was left standing in the ordinary line, fumbling with her bags and getting more and more agitated as she watched the minutes pass, while I breezed through priority check-in. When I had discreetly booked business class upgrades for Ray, her parents, and myself at the gate, a pleasant surprise to round off their trip comfortably, that was the last straw. But Ella stuck with her original budget seat. The full tale was conveyed by the expression on her face as she walked past our roomy business class seats. She remained silent, but her stiff posture and clenched jaw said a lot. We had first-class service up front, but she sat in economy the whole time. At last, Ella's calmness broke the instant we touched down. Tears were streaming down her face as she started into her account of events, virtually running to her parents at baggage claim. Her dramatic account claimed that I had purposefully denied her the flight upgrades, humiliated her in public, and left her at the hotel. Conveniently, she omitted the bit about her week-long effort to keep me out of every family activity. As she went on with her performance, her father, who was already exhausted from the trip, became clearly upset. She was too preoccupied with portraying herself as the victim of my alleged mistreatment to care about his health, even at this precise moment. Throughout Ella's performance, I remained composed and waited for the appropriate opportunity to argue my position. When I did talk, I described how she had deliberately kept me out of every family activity while on a trip that I had paid for. One by one, I exposed every family-only picture, every stage sitting arrangement, and every purposefully private conversation. The reasoning was straightforward. Why should she ask me to pay for her costs as family if she didn't think of me as family enough to be included in the memories? When her mother stepped in, her performance abruptly stopped. Ray's mother had had enough of her daughter's antics after a week. Firmly, "Ella, enough," she said. "We don't want to get involved. We noticed you cornering him the whole time. We urged you to include him, but you had your own plans to sideline him. Now deal with it." Ella reacted even more brutally, refusing to take responsibility. When she accused me of controlling the family with money, her true colors came out. "You partnered with your husband to humiliate your sister, your own blood," she yelled, turning to face Ray. "You'll see what this man is going to do to you. He's going to sleep with another woman right under your nose, and you won't be able to do anything. You're blinded by his money." Ray responded angrily to the unfounded accusation, making the baggage claim area seem like a scene from a family drama. Without Ray's father, the situation might have been worse. He had sat in respectful silence the entire journey, watching everything but saying little. His straightforward remark, "Ella, your brother-in-law has done enough for you. If you can't appreciate it, better keep your mouth shut," put an end to Ella's outburst, but the harm to family ties had already been done. There was a profound stillness in the airport terminal following my father-in-law's last remarks. With quiet firmness, he asked to depart right away, and I hurriedly assisted him to the car. Ella stood there by herself as we drove off. Even though she was 70 miles from home, she was too proud to beg for a ride. I knew the taxi fee would be exorbitant because she had arrived with us and hadn't brought her own car to the airport. However, after a week of her purposeful seclusion, I lost the will to care. It was a quiet journey to my in-laws' house. They both sincerely thanked us for the vacation when we got there. The extended embrace from my father-in-law conveyed more than words could possibly express. Everything was validated by that hug. After we got home, Ray and I resumed our regular routines and at first avoided talking about what had transpired. Until Ray finally broke the quiet a few days later, the subject remained unexplored. She disclosed that Ella was dealing with severe financial repercussions. Her husband was seeking full reimbursement since he was upset over having to save her. Ella found it difficult to handle the payback as well as her usual credit card obligations when he declined to save her pompous butt, as he described it. Ray was in favor of what I was doing, but she subtly hinted that I could have gone too far. However, she admitted that her sister had required this wake-up call even as she was saying it. For years, Ella had treated people with disdain and exploited their charity. It felt like long overdue justice that she was now being held accountable for her acts. I was able to honestly respond that I didn't regret my choices when Ray asked. Ella had selected her own tuition, by her actions, and often the most expensive lessons are also the most successful. An update on Thanksgiving: I got a range of responses after posting my tale online. Some said that I was too severe and that I ought to have just paid the price to maintain harmony. In order to finance everyone's lavish vacation, they wanted me to be a doormat and silently accept being treated like an outsider. However, I refuse to be used that way since I'm aware of my value. I only wanted Ella to be treated with basic respect and included in family events. I never intended her to grovel or become my servant. Her pride was more important to her than making amends, yet even after everything, I would have paid for her expenditures if she had just admitted her mistake and apologized. In actuality, Ella and I never had a close relationship. When she would visit Ray, our interaction was limited to courteous greetings at family events. Over the years, we didn't have any meaningful conversations or a true connection. Nevertheless, because she was family, I readily agreed to pay for her trip when she requested to go on the vacation. That kindness ought to have at least gained her some fundamental respect, but instead it seemed to strengthen her resolve to keep me out of her life. Ella's husband was still furious that he had to spend all of his money to pay for her exorbitant expenses. She had accrued a bill that was almost equivalent to his monthly wage. If their spouse spent a week acting like a princess on someone else's alleged dime, no working individual would be pleased to see their hard-earned money go. However, rather than take ownership of her actions, Ella did what she does best, which is to fabricate a story in which I am the villain who purposefully humiliated her and she is the victim. Knowing that Thanksgiving might be one of the final holidays spent with my father-in-law due to his deteriorating health, my mother-in-law had been organizing an extra special celebration during the planning stages. However, Ella's husband's refusal to go threw a wrench in the preparations. Why? He couldn't tolerate being seated at the same table as someone who would make fun of someone who wasn't as wealthy. My mother-in-law finally had enough at that point. She sat him down and told him everything about Ella's actions on the trip to Miami. She said to him, "Check out the pictures from the vacation. Really look at them." Ella's own social media post had photo after photo of me being purposefully left out, shoved behind the camera, or forced to sit apart. It was impossible to ignore the visible evidence of my systematic exclusion. My mother-in-law described how she and my father-in-law had made several attempts to involve me, but Ella had always found new methods to keep me out of the picture. I had always respected Ella's husband, so this was very painful. Although we weren't close friends, we always had cordial and courteous interactions on Thanksgiving and other holidays. I had never denigrated him because of his financial circumstances. I had never even entertained such ideas. We were only two men who had joined the same family and were doing our best to provide for our wives and help out where we could. Ella would go to great lengths to avoid accepting responsibility for her actions, as seen by the way she had tricked him into viewing me as a classist villain. After everything that had transpired, I was hesitant to attend Thanksgiving dinner, but I went out of respect for my father-in-law. A convenient explanation of visiting his parents was used to justify Ella and her husband's absence. The true story, which was far more repulsive than I had anticipated, didn't surface until after my father-in-law had gone to bed. It seemed that a significant argument in Ella's marriage had been sparked by the Miami incident. Instead of gaining humility from the event, she had used her shame as fuel to continuously disparage her husband based on his income. Even though she only worked 20 hours a week as a part-time employee, she started pressuring him to take on a second job on top of his full-time job. He accepted the reasonable requirement that he take a break from childcare and domestic chores in exchange for looking for more work. This concession infuriated Ella. Ella's husband had sobbed while telling her everything, according to my mother-in-law. It was astounding how much was expected of him. While she had a relaxed schedule, Ella wanted him to work well over 40 hours a week and still handle his fair share of household duties. It seems that the entitled attitude that had been so noticeable during our trip to Miami was only the beginning. After spending a week accruing debt she was unable to pay, the woman was now criticizing her diligent husband for not giving her a more opulent lifestyle. Ella's mother-in-law had done everything she could to help her see the light. She tried to convince Ella that her demands were unrealistic, supported her son-in-law, and gave advice to her daughter. However, it appeared that Ella had become dangerously aroused by the taste of luxury during our journey to Miami. Once claiming to be happy with modest family holidays, the woman was suddenly consumed with leading a life she hadn't earned. The situation got so bad that my mother-in-law had to give a firm order at last. She bluntly advised Ella that she shouldn't count on the family's support if her actions resulted in a divorce. More significantly, she was cautioned not to discuss marital issues with her father because the stress of seeing his daughter's marriage fall apart due to her newfound materialism was too much for his health. Ray and I thought about how our well-meaning invitation had gone awry on the way home from Thanksgiving dinner. There's no turning back once you taste the luxury of a private island. I recalled a remark I'd seen on display at the resort. Once you experience the luxury of a private island, you'd never set foot on a public one. This also applied to someone who had entered business class after years of economy. Her spouse was now suffering because we had unintentionally allowed Ella to see a way of life she couldn't support. I felt bad about the whole thing, not because I forced her to pay her own expenses, but because I exposed her to a lifestyle that had so thoroughly distorted her viewpoint. She momentarily had luxury, but now her husband, a kind man who worked hard to support his family, was being punished for not being able to sustain it. All I could do was hope she would change her mind before ruining her marriage to live a lifestyle she couldn't afford. The son's behavior is starting to creep me out, but I'm not sure if it's actually inappropriate or just a cultural difference. Original post. Hey there, using a throwaway just in case. So I'm from the US and recently moved to Italy to be a nanny. I feel this is important because so far I have not been able to tell if I'm struggling with a cultural difference here in Italy or if I actually have reason to be weirded out. It is easy to tell that the son, Dario, is in middle school, as he is already several inches taller than me and his mom, and has maybe 30 pounds on me. When I first got here, some of the stuff that freaked me out a little I could handle and I chalked it up to being an Italy thing. This includes stuff like talking almost exclusively in a baby voice when addressing his parents, calling his parents mommy and daddy, fighting physically with his little sister over who gets to sit on mom and dad's lap multiple times throughout the day, fighting with the sister over who gets to sleep with the parents, getting extremely upset when mom or dad leaves for the day, and whining about not getting enough kisses or time laying in bed kissing with mom, and having his parents blow on chewed food in his mouth because it's too hot. Now I really don't want to be critical of this if it's normal here, you know? But in the US I seriously can't imagine a single 7th grade boy engaging in any of these behaviors, so it's really new to me. And really it hadn't affected me, so I just let it be. The problem is though that now I'm starting to get involved and it's making me really uncomfortable. For example, our rooms have adjacent windows which allows the kids to see into my entire room at all times. To me, this is pretty inappropriate. What am I supposed to do when I need to change clothes? But I also don't want to seem like I am sexualizing children or accusing them of anything, so I just politely asked for curtains and took to changing in the bathroom. After weeks without curtains, the family finally promised me that someone was coming to put them up. Well, he only put them in the kids' room. Ever since then I find Dario peeping through the curtains at me multiple times a day. Now I'm sure he is just checking on me, or curious about what I'm up to, but it makes me so uncomfortable. I didn't want to tell the family though because I'm afraid they would think I was accusing their baby of trying to spy on me changing, so I just took matters into my own hands and hung a blanket up over my window. Another issue has been when we stay at the kids' grandparents' house. There's a room for the parents, with a bed for one child, and a room for me with a bed for one child. I figured we would split up boys and girls, and I would stay with the daughter, but nighttime rolls around and Dario is crawling into the bed next to mine. I was so uncomfortable I could hardly sleep. I have talked to my friends at home about this and they all think it's really weird, because we aren't related and he's a teenager now. But this is of course an American opinion. So I can't tell for sure if we're imposing our ideas on this family. Again, if this is really a cultural thing though, I don't know how to tell the family that where I'm from, It's kind of inappropriate for a boy so old to be sleeping next to me, especially when he's been spying on me lately. Without causing issues. Of course, these behaviors affect other aspects of our life as well, as it is hard to get Dario to do anything because he usually claims it's too hard to do. Making a bed at 13? Too hard? Are you kidding? And I often find myself wanting to tell him to grow up. What I need help with is knowing whether he does need to grow up or if all this behavior is normal here and I'm the crazy American that needs to adjust. Is this behavior normal for a 12-year-old, or is it immature? I feel like the parents still really see him as a young child, and usually he acts like it, but for the most part it seems like he plays up the baby act because he knows it makes his parents cater to him more. If this all is abnormal, does anyone have any suggestions about how to bring this up to the family? Edit. Just want to clarify that at the grandparents' house there are 2 beds, and they are next to each other. Dario was not in my bed but in the bed next to mine. TLDR, I am a nanny for a boy, 13M, whose behavior makes me uncomfortable. I'm not sure if he is actually being inappropriate or if there is just a large cultural difference between my home country and this country. Relevant comments. The freaky. It's normal behavior for a spoiled 13-year-old. Of course most adolescents would want to peek at you through the curtains. The problem is the parents, they have to stop that shit right now. Don't you have authority as a nanny to scold him? I'm Spanish, we have a very similar culture to Italy, and that shit is inappropriate. The parents are educating a horrible child that will grow up to be an asshole that thinks the world should cater to him. Oop, oh my goodness, the relief I am feeling right now to know that this isn't normal. So far I have not particularly felt like I have much authority because the times I would scold him, the parents are sitting right there, and how can I reprimand him in front of his own parents? I didn't include this in the post, but he is already showing major signs of being an asshole. He's always so rude, critical, and ungrateful. Every meal I make he has something to insult about it. He treats his little sister like shit even though she is a doll and often acts more mature than him, and he loves ordering me around and telling me what I'm doing wrong. It drives me up the wall. B186. We've established this kid's behavior is weird. But WTF at the parents responding to your request for privacy/curtains by giving them to the child. OOP, I have no clue. They've been really weird about some stuff. Like, this is TMI, but the mom knew I was on my period because I had to ask her where to buy tampons here, and we got to the house and there's no trash can in the bathroom or in my room. I asked for one multiple times and she said she would get one and never did, and when I asked last she said, well, the kids have a trash can in their room if you need it. Like, WTF, are you not an adult woman? Do you not understand how this works? Do the parents discipline the kids? I asked about discipline when I interviewed and they said they don't really have to discipline the kids. I should have taken it as a warning sign. Honestly, the mom is very strict about some stuff, so they're very good in certain areas that she deems important. Etiquette, cleanliness. But when Dario picks on the daughter, they just let the kids yell and scream and cry until I step in. They also seem to encourage many of Dario's rude comments because technically he does word them politely. For example, I will bust my ass making a meal for the whole family. To be kind and helpful, it is not in my job description. And Dario will eat 4 plates of it and then say, I'm sorry, but why would you cook this like that? And I'll say, that's how we cook it in the US. And he'll say, well, I didn't like it. The Italian way is much better. And then put his plate on mine for me to take it to the kitchen and leave. No thanks for cooking. No, but I did like this part. Just insult, clean my plate, bye. He loves to criticize. Is the child autistic? I thought about the autism initially, but I'm fairly certain it isn't that because when his parents are gone the baby act completely turns off and he acts like any other teenager, albeit manipulative and critical, I have ever known. And I have worked in childcare, in the classroom, and as a coach for years now. Update. Hi all, I'm back. Yeesh, how long has it been? 3-4 months later with an update. Long story short, I quit. Here's the long version for those interested. The curtain issue. Like I said in my last post, I had just hung a blanket for privacy and since then there have been no peeping issues. I asked 2 more times for curtains and was reassured both times that the curtain man would come to hang them in my room. He did come back once and hung more curtains in the kids' room, but again not in mine. Then I was told that they didn't like him and would be finding another curtain guy to hang my curtains. It's been 4 months, no more mention of it, I still use the blanket. The vacation issue, I have simply refused to go on vacation with them. I'm off on weekends and I've reached a point where I just refuse to be home for the entire weekend and manage not to see them from Friday night until Monday morning if I can help it. I go on weekend trips, crash on couches, sneak into my room when they're eating. Things like that just to avoid seeing anyone on my days off. The Dario issue. Dario still acts extremely immaturely. I've warmed up to him a lot, and I've figured out how to cut his rudeness and such. He's become a lot more positive and kind, especially because his mom has been gone a lot and he's with me every day. I'm very upbeat and have worked really hard to get him to socialize and speak kindly. Unfortunately, he seems to have almost regressed in terms of his childish behavior. He still sits on laps, kisses a lot, and sleeps with a parent when the other is gone. The baby talk is constant. Constant. For example, he loves to repeat back butchered syllables of words if that makes sense. Like his dad will say, "Pasami un cuchillo." Pass me a spoon, and he will clap and exclaim, "Ayo," or "Voy del agua?" Do you want water? And he'll go, "Qua qua." He also has started eating kind of like a baby too. Like he'll take the remaining tomato sauce that we used on pasta and use the giant spoon to drink it out of the pot and get it all over his face, and then suck on each of his fingers. But when I look at his parents, they're looking at him like when you see a cute baby trying to use a fork and getting food on his face. But he's 13, so it's honestly sickening to watch and listen to. He won't lock the door when he goes to the bathroom or showers. Why? I started locking the door when I was like 7. And he even cried the other day when his sister sat on the foot of his bed. He doesn't like things touching his bed. And guess what? The parents got mad at the daughter, said it was her fault for baiting him, she just had to tie her shoe for a second, and declared that it's her fault. Dario will be upset all night. He also hasn't made any progress with friends and has taken to playing League of Legends, so he won't leave his room or do any activities or lessons with me or the sister. It's pretty sad, honestly. Basically, the hardest part of this whole thing has been the mother. I won't even go into it here, but she's honestly clinically insane, and I feel so bad for all the people in this house that have to put up with her. She's just a power-hungry, jealous, bitter woman who needs to see a professional. Basically, I went home for Christmas to be with my friends and family and realized how bad this experience was for my health. I was going out drinking almost every night to escape the house. I was sleeping horribly because I knew she was here and her presence gave me awful anxiety. I was getting yelled at every day even when I did nothing wrong. I was at home in the States and the thought of going back made me absolutely miserable. So when I came back, I told them I needed to go back early for medical reasons. Not totally untrue, and now I'm set to leave the last week of March. They've found a new girl. Look out for her post here sometime in the future. TLDR, Dario is still acting like a baby, the mom is still crazy, and I fucking quit. Homies, get me out of here. My ex kicked me out mid-road trip, now demands I drive 2 states to return a watch he stashed in my bag to test me. Original post. So yeah, like the title says, we were both remote workers and decided that we could van life and see things while still working. We lasted about a month, and last week he flipped out over the way I sipped my coffee and told me I had to leave. I thought he meant like we would pack up and figure out how to get me home. No, he meant I needed to get out with all my shit in the middle of a state park in New Mexico and figure it out. I was scared and pissed, so I hurriedly packed everything and got out. A very nice older couple had heard the screaming and saw me with a pile of my stuff and asked if I needed help. I said yes, and they said they would drive me to Albuquerque in their RV and we could figure out what would happen next. Well, it turns out they are the sweetest people ever, and we eventually came to the conclusion it would be easier for me to travel with them home to Kansas, and now they've allowed me to stay, paying them insanely fair rent, food, etc. I just have to edit the wife's book and help the husband with his guitar playing. Well, it turns out in the hurry of packing I grabbed my ex's watch. That was his dad's. I got in touch with him and told him I was sorry. It was truly an accident and I had no intention of keeping it. How would he like me to get it to him? He said I needed to meet him in Utah. I said that was ridiculous, I could send it to him. He said that it was too valuable to trust to mail or FedEx and needed to be hand-relieved. I said I was in Kansas and not coming to Utah, but I would return the watch to his brother when I go home in March. He said no, the only solution was for me to drive it to him. I said I didn't even have a car. He said, you're probably fucking half of Lawrence, use one of theirs. At that point I blocked him. The watch is pretty valuable and has a lot of sentimental value, and I will return it. It was my oversight that I have it in the first place. What are my obligations to follow his instructions to get the watch back to him? Edit. Wow, this blew up. For the people asking, it is a lower-end Rolex watch. It still has all the original box and even receipt when his dad bought it, but it was well worn, so he's never been sure how much it's worth. I guess a few hundred, maybe $1,000, so I'm not sure. I'm not going to keep it or destroy it since it's not mine in any way. Top comments. Comment 1. You gave reasonable options. Let's say he files a police report that you stole it. You have proof that you contacted him and asked where you could send it. He declined. Comment 2. Dude sounds like a psychopath. Do not under any circumstances willingly meet up with him in person ever again. Don't let him know where you live. This level of douchery is a sign of something being very off and you don't want to be there again when he short circuits again. You were extremely lucky to have found the people you did. Who knows where you'd be if that had not happened. Update. So I posted exactly a week ago. Link below, but the short story was I was van living with my ex-boyfriend. He kicked me out after a temper tantrum and I caught a ride with some awesome people. I discovered I had an ex's dad's watch that had lots of sentimental value. I told him, asked where I should send it. He demanded I drive from Kansas to Utah and return it even though I don't have a car. Well, so lots of mixed advice, but most people said the best option was to contact his brother. Before I did that, I decided to unblock my ex just to give him one more chance to give me an address where I could ship the watch. Actual text conversation. Me? Hey, I'm sorry I blocked you. I just didn't appreciate the insults, but I want to get her dad's watch back. Can you let me know where to send it? I'll pay for shipping, no problem. Like less than 30 seconds later, him. I stashed the watch in your bag because I wanted to prove to myself what an awful person you are and do a good job at proving me right again. I was like, wow, so many people in the original said that he probably put the watch in my stuff as I was packing in order to force communication and force the opportunity to see him again. Well, you were exactly correct. I didn't even respond to his text and blocked him again. I have no intention of keeping the watch, so I decided now it was time to contact his brother, who, along with his wife, has always been very nice to me. He was super appreciative and we spent a couple days going back and forth figuring out the shipping, but the watch arrived to him on Friday and all is good. He even Venmo'd me $1,000 for being so honest, contacting him, etc. I make really good money, so I told him it wasn't necessary at all, but he insisted, so we agreed to donate it to a food pantry here in Lawrence. But I'm still so creeped out thinking about the day when he kicked me out of the van and he was screaming at me, calling me all sorts of names, and he was planning to stay in touch with me. He was slamming all my stuff into bags, but that was cover for him hiding the watch. The fact that it was so deliberate yet he thought of it so quickly is so scary to me. We got along so well before we left and he always seemed like such a great guy. I don't know if the confined space of the van is too much for any couple or if it brought out a side of him I didn't know was there. Makes me sad and scared at the same time. But relieved it's over. Relevant comments. Comment 1. He framed you? To prove to himself that you were awful? He's dumb enough to fall for his own frame job? I really truly can't wrap my head around how stupid he must be. Comment 2. What I don't get is his logic that this would prove OP's a bad person. How the fuck was she supposed to know about the watch when you kicked her ass out in a state she didn't know about it until after she got to safety, possibly thousands of miles away? Like you thought she was just gonna be running back to you? Fuck that dude. Comment 3. I think in his batshit crazy mind she was bad to not instantly head to Utah to return it. He's clearly insane. A coworker asked me to be her man of honor. I said no and she went nuts. What did I miss? Original post. This happened yesterday and I'm still confused. Yesterday was my first day back to work after being off for 2 weeks. This is kinda important. One of my coworkers had gotten engaged the week before I left. When she announced at work, we all did the congratulations and were happy for her type of things. I thought it was over. So when I left for vacation last, I knew no plans had yet been made. Then yesterday when I went back to work, my boss Kim and best friend Laura said that coworker Claire was looking for me. I asked what was up and they weren't sure, but she was carrying a little gift bag. A few minutes later, Claire found me and asked how my vacation was. I was telling them about it and she cut me off and said she had a very important question to ask. She handed me a little gift bag and asked if I would be her best man of honor for her wedding. I thanked her and told her that typically this would traditionally go to a close female relationship. She responded that there was nothing traditional about her wedding, so it was good. I looked over at Laura and Kim, who were both trying to keep from laughing. I again thanked her and congratulated her and told her that I wasn't interested in being part of her wedding party and that I would be happier being a guest in the audience. I swear when I said this it was when we watched her entire demeanor change and a switch flipped. She went off saying that I have to be at her wedding and that she doesn't understand why I would say no. I told her that we only knew each other for a short time and that I had no interest in trying to plan parties, dinners, and shopping trips. She told me I needed to think about it and she would get back to me later. I told her to go for it, but my answer will be the same. She walked away and I looked at Kim and Laura and asked what the ever-loving fresh creepy hell was that. Kim started to laugh and said she didn't know. But saying no like I did might have saved me a lot of headaches in the future. Laura made the comment that she went straight to Bridezilla and this was a look into what she was going to be like. Claire came back today, however she went with a different approach and handed me a list of what she wants me to do and her vision of how she sees things. I asked her why she gave me this and she said that as her man of honor these were my responsibilities. I told her again that I was not going to do any of this. She said again that she needs me to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Then she asked, "Haven't you ever wanted to be a part of something special?" I told her I was. I was a nurse. Enter Kim, who could sense that I needed help and told Claire one of her patients needed her help. I told Kim that if this keeps up I might need her help. She said she was already watching it and would intervene if I needed it. What did I miss? We aren't that close. She just transferred down to my unit from a different unit 6 months ago. I had no idea who she was until that point. Laura is saying that she is close in age to me and she might feel that to be enough of a connection. Did I miss something? When we are asked, are we supposed to automatically gush and jump up and down in excitement? Why is saying no a bad thing? Some of OOP's comments. Commenter, it seems Kim is useless here. You really need to go over Kim's head and nip this in the bud right now because Claire isn't taking no for an answer. OOP, Kim will help, I know she will. She is just waiting to see what her next step is. I have had to have her help with a work issue before. If I have problems with her the next time we work together, I'll let Kim loose. Could this be some weird way to flirt? It won't work with me. I like dick. LOL, and I have a boyfriend. LOL commenter. I'm not an expert, but isn't this an HR issue now? I mean, isn't that like harassment? OOP, it becomes an issue if I report it. My boss is seeing all of it so far and has said that she is watching the situation and will intervene if it keeps going. I'm off tomorrow so I won't see her for a couple of days. Commenter. She wants to show off how different and edgy she is by having a man of honor. She may also admire your organizing skills and get it done demeanor and thinks you'll throw her great wedding-related parties. OOP, I'm a bad gay guy friend. I'm organized when it comes to a lot of things. But planning a wedding is something I have never done and really don't want to learn to do. If I were to ever get married, it's midnight under a full moon at the beach with a few friends and a cookout the next day. LOL commenter. Okay, this is going to sound weird, but since she's advertising that it's a non-traditional wedding, is it possible she's after you for a specific reason? Are you gay or part of a racial minority? It's possible she wants her wedding to look super diverse for Instagram reasons and maybe she's after you for a specific vibe in the pictures. Regardless of the reason, NTA. OOP. I don't know her background. Yes, I am gay and the entire department knows it because I was dating a former nurse and we broke up. Now I'm dating someone from a different department and it's all known. All she said was it was a less than traditional wedding and it would be okay. Yesterday K and L asked if I was afraid of something about it. Maybe if I had to wear a dress. I said I would fucking rock the dress. I might need a push-up to fill out the front of a dress if it's strapless. LOL, but I just don't want anything to do with it. I have no interest. My life is crazy enough right now. Planning a wedding would go from crazy to insane. Update 1. Hey everyone. First I apologize. I never thought this was going to go as crazy as it did. I want all of you to know I read all of your responses and responded to as many as I was able to. Thank you all for your amazing insights and comments. Many that made me laugh, which I needed. I have been sick and that really helped to cheer me up. I had to meet with my lawyer today regarding family issues. Editor's note, OOP goes into detail about those issues in other posts on his profile, but they weren't relevant here, so I didn't include them. My neighbor, best friend, co-worker Laura took me. I really felt awful and driving wasn't a good idea. We were talking about this on the way and we both were asking a lot of the same questions that all you were asking. The big one was that we were asking about the circumstances of her transfer. She went from Med-Surg 4W to the ER. That is a huge change. I have to work tomorrow so we will see what happens. But Laura and I are going to ask him about the transfer and raise a couple of other concerns. After I got home from the meeting with my lawyer I slept for the rest of the day. Many of you asked about if Claire and I hang out outside of work. The answer is no. I really don't know anything about her. I have helped her a few times with patients and different things, but our relationship is 100% purely work-related. That was why I was so surprised that she asked me to do this. That is why I was so surprised that she asked me about being the man of honor. I have a very small friend base and in all honesty I like to keep it that way. I really have no interest in being a part of this. I'm not a wedding person. After reading so many Bridezilla stories and hearing about over-the-top weddings, they have become a huge turnoff to me, spending tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars with insane unrealistic demands that turn people against each other. Why? I would rather use that money and spend that time planning my next trip or vacation. Many people said that I was being used as a token or prop in a wedding. Or a gay best friend. I never really thought about it. I admit that I'm out and proud, but I'm not going to just pretend to be someone's friend just so they can fulfill some kind of fetish they have for wanting to have a gay best friend or some kind of status she feels the need to fulfill. It takes me a lot to get offended, but if this were actually the case, then I would really be rather offended. I was not put on the face of the earth to be someone's play toy. A lot of people have said that maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend. She does. She has brought him in before. If she has any insecurity, I don't understand it. She is attractive, smart, and knows her stuff. So I'm at a loss as to why she is acting like this. A lot of people say go to HR. I'm starting that process with my boss Kim. She is completely aware of the situation being with us when all this happens. She has told me that she is watching the situation and will jump in if I need her to. I trust her completely. While Kim and HR can control the situation from the hospital, they can't control the situation from a personal level if she were to maybe follow me home or a situation like that. So I think that covers it all. I wish I could say this is over. But most likely there is more to come. Please update me. Comments. Commenter. About that name. OOP's username. You're not just an RN, because there's nothing just about RNs, or other nurses. You folks, regardless of gender, do the medical heavy lifting, and when we can't get a straight, answer from the oh-so-busy MDs, the nurses provide the no-shit information. OOP, my name is kind of an ongoing running inside joke. I'm told at least once a day or so from a patient that I'm just a nurse. One day I heard it 3 times. I don't really take offense to this. And in a joking way I repeated what the patient said and my boss Kim jumped my case about. That's not the case at all. I love my job. It's a huge part of me and who I am. It's a part of my identity. Commenter, I'm curious about her list of demands or responsibilities. Like, did she really think you would change your mind now that you had all this BS work to do and money to spend? OP, it pretty much had me planning the whole thing. She wanted me to plan the bridal shower, the bachelorette party, coordinate dress shopping and fittings, make sure everyone was having fun with the whole thing. Just to name a few. Commenter, OP. What the ever-loving fresh creepy hell is this? LMAO oop. I had no idea what the ever-loving fresh creepy bell was from something. It's just something I have always said. Mini update in comments. Next day. I'll be posting an update in a day or two. Things came to a head today and it was pretty much just as everyone was saying. I need to take some time to understand everything that happened today. I also have a meeting scheduled Monday with the director of nursing at my hospital which should bring closure. I hope so. Update post. This intro is going to be long, but I'm telling you about this for a reason and later in this update, it will make sense. I'm hoping this will be done and that this will be the last of this whole situation. I was born into a family where I was referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with. I lived in the shadows of my sister who was the child my parents wanted. They wanted one child which was a girl. That way dad had his daddy girl and mom had mommy little princess. Then I came along. Keep in mind that I'm 23, so back then my parents had options but chose to not use any of those options. So instead my parents raised my sister and I was raised by a nanny who even to this day is one of the biggest influences in my life and I am so grateful for her. She helped me so much. I finally realized that all these years later that by being referred to as an issue that needed to be dealt with, that they stripped me of my humanity and individuality and self-worth as a person. I think that's why I have worked so hard to establish myself in my career and in my life. As a way to become a person again and not just be that issue that needed to be dealt with. This past Thursday things came to a head with the bridezilla known as Claire and the truth came out. My best friend Laura has been sticking close to me when we worked together if Claire was to start something. We weren't sure if she was going to leave it alone or start up again. I was really hoping that it was done. But she had to try once again. I've been sick and I had a busy morning so I really just wanted a few minutes to go to the bathroom, grab a quick snack and maybe breathe. Claire came up and had her list and asked if I had a few minutes to talk about the wedding planning. I looked at her and told her again that I was not interested in being part of her wedding and that I was not going to help in any way and she needed to drop the subject and leave me alone. Again she went into the whole thing of how I was going to do this and how much fun it was going to be. Here we go with that line all of you loved the first time. Why in the ever-loving fresh creepy hell is it so important for me to be your man of honor? I'm not interested and I'm not doing it. It is as exactly as pretty much all of you told me it would be. She was just planning on using me as a token or a play toy. She took all of the fucked up gay stereotypes that are out in society and put them into one sentence. What modern liberal woman isn't going to have a gay bestie on her arm for special events? I felt everything in my stomach move and a wave of nausea came over me and I felt like I couldn't get to the bathroom fast enough. This pissed Laura off to no end. Laura is really kinda like the overprotective sister that I wish I would have had and took Claire off to visit our boss Kim and laid it all out. Everything that was said. While I wasn't in on that conversation, Laura and Kim filled me in on what was said. Kim came to check on me and I was still hiding in the bathroom. She knocked on the door and asked if she could come in. I asked her for a bottle of water first. While I was waiting, I realized two things. I realized why I chose to not hang out with her and why I didn't like her. I couldn't figure out why I didn't like her, just that there was something that gave me the heebie-jeebies. But I realized that I didn't like her because she is a different version of my sister. While Claire is educated and employed, she doesn't care about other people and their feelings. She is like my sister in the sense that if she wants something bad enough, she will figure out how to get it. The second thing I realized was that she did exactly what my parents did to me. She completely dehumanized me and reduced me to an entity. Just kinda turned me into a token or a thing for her. I think the word that best describes it is I must be a play toy. What really gets me is that just like my sister, Claire doesn't think she did anything wrong and I'm being too sensitive and a delicate snowflake. The next day an emergency meeting was held at work and Claire is being suspended pending investigation and a new transfer is being looked into. Kim made the request for her to be terminated. The director of emergency nursing said this was a last resort, but she was going to be looking into options which could be sending her to a new hospital or facility. This didn't go over well with me. I asked what would happen if she did the exact same thing to someone different. She didn't really give me an answer. But she said she still needs to look into a few things and at this point she is suspended. Anyway. Here it is. I'm still pretty sick and had to work this weekend. If I can, I'll respond. I want to thank everyone for all the amazing support. I am going back to my lawyer to see if he can figure out how to send her a cease and desist letter to make sure she doesn't contact me. I'm heading to bed. Have a good night. Edit. I keep forgetting to thank my boyfriend. He has been with me on this but more in the background. First when we were laughing about it. But when everything Thursday happened he was there as well. Elle was able to get him away from his unit for a little bit for the OK boyfriend hug. He stayed the night with me a couple of nights as well, also helping with me being sick. So yeah. I'm very lucky to have such great support. OOP's comments. Commenter. What if she targets a vulnerable gay patient next? She's a danger and a liability for your employers to be sued. OOP. Thank you for this response. I just texted Kim and asked her about this. She said she was trying to get her fired. And she is hoping this will help the purpose. My boyfriend won't ask for my hand, and now my dad is staging a family boycott of our wedding. Is my boyfriend being selfish? Original post. I've been with my boyfriend, M25, for 3 years. We both just finished school, and are finally ready for marriage. He proposed last week and I happily said yes. I could not be happier. I love him and he is going to be an awesome dad someday. But my BF is in a very new school and my dad is kind of old school. My dad was beyond mad that my boyfriend did not ask my dad for my hand before proposing. My dad said he was willing to hear my boyfriend's apology if my boyfriend formally asks for my hand at a dinner that my dad said he will pay for at the restaurant of my boyfriend's choosing. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. He will bring my boyfriend's favorite wine to celebrate. I spoke to my boyfriend last night and he won't budge. He doesn't believe in that tradition. My boyfriend showed me an article online where a Pakistani woman was stoned to death outside a courthouse because she married a man against her family's wishes. This just happened. My boyfriend, who witnessed his father be abusive/possessive with his mom as a child, has always felt strongly that women are not property. He thinks the tradition of asking for her hand is repulsive. His point is that he's met my whole family and gotten to know them. He says they have always known his intentions and he never made it secret that he was in love with me and wanted to marry me and have children. He feels he was done enough to announce his intentions and all of them seem to approve of him. He says that at this point he only needs my approval to marry him and nobody else's. So yesterday my mom told me that my dad, who is not even speaking to me because I won't set my foot down with my boyfriend, is calling the whole family and telling them to not attend my wedding. My mom says that my boyfriend is the one treating me like property by not letting me have a say in his decision to not observe a tradition that my 2 older sisters' husbands observed. I told my mother that I understand where my boyfriend is coming from and that I have decided to do away with the tradition of him asking for my hand. So my mother is obviously mad and said that I should be ready for serious consequences. I asked her what and she would not say. But from talking to my sister, she said that they would blackball us from all family gatherings. My two sisters and my mom have told me my boyfriend is being selfish. The wedding is set for August 9th. I'm worried that nobody in my family will attend my wedding. Edit. I'm getting some comments about my boyfriend asking for my parents' blessing instead of permission, or hand. I just can't see the difference. There might be one, but I don't see it. Is there a big difference? TL.dr. My boyfriend won't ask my dad for my hand in marriage, and my parents is having my family boycott my wedding and threatening other consequences. Relevant comments. Oopie, thanks for the congrats and comments. I was just thinking as I read some comments here. One comment said that my parents should not have staged the boycott either way. So maybe the boycott signals something more than just my father wanting to be included in some way. I don't know. I'm now worried that the boycott and calling all my relatives signals more controlling issues that my dad has that I never noticed before. My two older sisters had no problems with their wedding because they did everything the way my dad liked. So I'm scared now that maybe my boyfriend is right, that it's not just a tradition. Deleted. My dad feels like he is being very accommodating. No, both he and your mother are being controlling. And they are attempting to make you choose between your fiancé and them. Choose your fiancé, otherwise you're setting precedent for this type of behavior interference for the rest of your marriage. OOP, this is what I'm afraid of. My fiancé and I don't practice Catholic religion like my family does. So I wonder what will happen when my kids aren't baptized and all that. Pastanazgul. You two need to have a discussion about how the children will be raised religion-wise now, before you have the child. Just advice from someone who learned the hard way. OOP, we did. We don't want religion in our children's lives. We decided that education is going to be the focus, and they will make their own minds up about religion once they are educated adults. I grew up Catholic, but I don't want that for my kids. My husband grew up somewhat Christian and he still believes in God, but he doesn't want religion to be a part of our family either. We have talked about this subject to death. You're right, it's very important. I realize we might change our minds later, who knows? But my family doesn't know about this. I have a feeling after this boycott that my parents will stage another one when they find out we won't be Catholic. Update. The wedding went on as planned. My parents stuck to their guns and boycotted. One of my two sisters attended and is now happily blacklisted from our family. Nobody else from my entire family showed up, including my two brothers. The wedding was a little unconventional. My sister walked my husband down the aisle and then his sister walked me down the aisle. I wanted this because my SIL actually introduced us and helped me get my first date with him. There was no question about who gives away the bride or even about objections. It was normal other than that. There has been no contact between me and my family, other than my one sister. My mother has made it a point to send me a card every time that they have a family gathering for holidays or birthdays at their house to let me know that my father says I'm not invited. I get one almost every month. I don't even read them anymore, I just toss them. I don't know why they keep sending them because I've made no effort to contact them and I live over 3 hours away, so it's not like I will run into them by accident. The reason I came back to post this here is because some people here made a prediction that came true, that they would come crawling back when we had children. I am now expecting our first child, a girl. She will be the first grandchild for my parents. My parents found out about the pregnancy a few months ago through a family friend. They didn't waste any time in making demands, not request demands. My boyfriend and I are not religious, but I had a Catholic upbringing. I don't practice at all by choice. My mother called me back in April telling me that my father wanted our daughter's middle name to be his mother's first name. I said no. My father was listening in on the speaker, so I went ahead and told them that they were officially uninvited from all birthdays, graduations, and any other important dates in her life. My father called me half an hour later crying and begging me to come stay with them for the birth so my mother could care for me. I said no. He also said that he had already made arrangements for his priest to baptize her at his church, but that I needed to agree to naming her after his mother if I wanted this to happen. He said he'd already planned a big celebration for the birth and the baptism that he was paying for. I said no to all of it. He went from meekly trying to sweet-talk me to raising his voice at me, and I hung up. He called a couple of more times to apologize for losing his temper and again begged me to reconsider giving birth at a hospital near them so they could visit us. He denied having any knowledge of my mother sending me cards to uninvite us to any family functions, and even said that he specifically asked her to invite us, but he was told I declined every time. He lets my mom do the dirty work so he can later hide behind her and deny he had any knowledge. He's done this since I was a little girl. He does this every time he wants to drop the hammer on somebody but be a good cop also. He'll never change. He denied having any knowledge of why anybody in the family missed my wedding. I told him our daughter would not be baptized, or Catholic at all, no offense to Catholics. I told him he was too manipulative and controlling and I didn't want my daughter exposed to that. He's too toxic and just venomous. Coincidentally, the day and for several days after that phone call I got tons of calls and emails from my brothers, their wives, my sister and all my aunts. They all wanted to apologize for missing my wedding, and all had specific excuses, and wanted to make plans to be there for my daughter's birth. I banned them all from her life until she's old enough to decide for herself to let them in. My husband was a little surprised and not sure about banning everybody forever. He's more leaning towards supervised visits if they want to drive to us. My dad has been calling him like crazy, but we are a united front. My husband is deferring to me but giving me ideas as to how I can give a little if I decide to. But with my family there's no giving a little. They want it all. For now, they're all banned. I will reconsider when the youngest of our children turns 18. For now my dad will have to settle for sucking up to my husband while I stick to my guns. Unlike him, I don't mind owning my decisions even if it means I'm a bad cop. I'm not ready to give up a relatively drama-free, stress-free life to allow my dad and all his sheep back into our lives. TL Doctor, nobody in my family showed up to our wedding other than one of my sisters. Everyone is banned from our lives. Relevant comments, downvoted commenter. He should have just done such a small task and asked, like to make peace, geez, I mean really pushing your family away for such a stupid reason. On their side and yours. OP, but that's the thing. After that one small task they would want to name my daughter, another small task, then they would ask I go have the baby near them, another small task, then have her baptized by their priest, then they pick her school, then they make life decisions for her like they tried with me and my siblings, all small tasks. OP replying to a downvoted comment that things have gone too far and to make amends for their daughter. I guess I would tell you that not everything fits in the oversimplification in your comment. My daughter will be better off without a full family of manipulative, controlling and abusive people, or people who condone such behavior. After years of abuse I was glad my husband decided my dad's demand that he ask permission to marry me was too antiquated. The original conflict that caused this rift was years of abuse and manipulation. I chose to burn bridges that needed to go. Otherwise I would never be free to make my own decisions about my own life without consulting with my dad at every turn. My girlfriend keeps a spreadsheet tracking every spider in her apartment. I got her a pet tarantula, and now she's feeding them to it. Original post, my GF, M31, F27, and I have been dating for just over a year. This sounds so cliché, but she is almost perfect for me. She is really into health and fitness, has an excellent career that she worked really hard for, is great in bed, kind and intelligent. But, she lives in a basement suite which is nicely decorated and she keeps very clean. Any of you that have lived in a basement suite before know that, no matter what you do you get bugs, ants, piddlebugs, beetles and spiders. I spent a fair amount of time at her place and noticed right away that there was a spider in almost every corner. I asked her about it and she told me she doesn't kill them because they eat the other bugs. Okay. I did some light research and sure enough she was right. I found it a little creepy but not a deal breaker. Here's where things get weird. About a week and a half ago I was using her computer and noticed a spreadsheet called Babies. Curiously got the best of me and opened it. She lovingly named all of the spiders, kills the other bugs and feeds them to the spiders and keeps track of it all in a creepy rear-end spreadsheet. She keeps track of their food, their color, size, web size and some other poo-poo that I didn't really understand. I closed the spreadsheet after I realized what it was about because one felt bad for snooping and was honestly pretty disturbed. I really love her and don't want to break up but I'm afraid that this is a sign of mental illness. Has anyone ever heard of anything like this before? Should I say something to her? Is it okay for me to ask her to stop? Is this really that big of a deal? TLDR, GF is a crazy spider lady. Edit, 1 No I'm in rear end and a top hat for snooping. Edit, we live in Australia. Relevant comments, deleted. I think the big takeaway from all this is that you should never, never, kill a spider around her. OP, no shit. Hey LOL Wolfhawk 706, you're 31 and you're unsure how a little interest in your girlfriend for over a year makes you feel. She's just logging spider data, heaven forbid she ever does anything truly bizarre, you might go into shock. OP, you don't think it's weird? At all? Pancake_ice. So long as she isn't bulking them up to have a spider fight club I think you're okay. Yes, it is weird, but I think collecting stamps is weird. I suggest asking her about it. Apologize for snooping and ask her, but don't accuse her, why she enjoys her hobby since it is freaking you out so much. Top comments. JDune02, honestly, I think this is an adorably bizarre hobby. Let her have her quirks. This is pretty goddamn harmless in the grand scheme of things. Or, freak out over this, confront her and break up in 6 weeks. Your call, dude. Edit. OP, you do realize that people collect spiders, right? It's a legit and perfectly acceptable hobby. If the spiders were in cages, you probably wouldn't think twice about this. She's basically just a free-range spider collector. Big whoop. Amber 626. I had a huntsman in my house for about 6 months. I named him Jeffrey. I was absolutely terrified of spiders since I was little, so having Jeffrey around was great. I learned that he didn't want to bother me at all. I watched him hunt. It was super interesting. Learning about your fears is an awesome way to confront them. Perhaps this is what OP's GF is doing. Either way, it's a pretty awesome way to learn about them. Ooh, ha 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 ha. Maybe I can convince her to cage them. This is so fucked. JDU02. This is so fucked. Oh my sweet summer child. If this is blowing your mind, then I'm worried for you. Update April 3, 2015, original post. GF won't kill spiders in her apartment. Found a spreadsheet on her computer named Babies, keeping track of all of the spiders in her apartment. So I took all of your advice and tried to embrace this part of her life. It was our anniversary last week and I decided to get her a spider-themed gift. I was at the mall and one thing led to another and I ended up buying her a pet tarantula and an aquarium for it. She loved it, but I noticed the beloved spiders disappearing from around her apartment over the last few days. I asked her about it and it turns out she's been killing them and feeding them to her new tarantula. I don't know how I feel about this. First she is calling them babies, and now she is killing them. I'm just trying not to think about it and hoping she doesn't find a better BF to feed me to one day. LOL, oh well. TLDR, I bought my spider-obsessed GF a pet tarantula and she is slowly feeding her smaller spiders to it. Edit. Someone sent me a helpful message about spider food, care, etc. And it occurred to me that she might not be able to afford real food for it. Although she has a higher salary than me, she is aggressively trying to pay off student loans so has virtually no extra money. I'm going to buy her a gift card for the pet store tomorrow. Thanks Reddit. Edit. Apparently spider food is very cheap. Still gonna get her the gift card in case it needs anything else I didn't think of. Relevant comments. Deleted. That was a thoughtful gift. Good job. Big spiders eat little spiders. I wouldn't worry too much about it. She has a real pet spider now, one that you gave her. It sounds like you solved the problem of having wild spiders walking around the apartment and you made your girlfriend happy. Everybody wins. Oopie, thanks. Deleted. LOL, you gifted her the spider, so it is something that is way more important to her than the so-called babies. Take this as a sign of her love for you. Oopie, I hope so. Thanks. She named it Fluffy and, unfortunately, takes it out of its cage quite often. She will hold it while we are watching movies on the couch. Lol, I pretend not to be afraid of it.